Before waking up in this fantasy world, our protagonist spent his previous life bedridden and utterly paralyzed, coping with his useless legs by writing a massive doctoral thesis on reviving ancient martial arts. But a sudden reincarnation gives him a second chance in a brand new, fully functional body, leading him straight to the gates of the Empire's most prestigious academy for elite fighters, where a confident Louis immediately challenges him to stop holding back and show his true power, which turns out to be a massive mistake as the protagonist effortlessly flattens his first opponent, utilizing his deep knowledge of modern boxing techniques to perfectly complement his newly acquired physical strength, allowing him to analyze his opponents and calculate the exact outcome of any battle instantly, making him believe he can finally live out his ultimate dream of becoming an unstoppable warrior. Until a terrifying red eye locks onto him, signaling that his easy ride is officially over. This protagonist suddenly feels his brand new body slipping into an uncontrollable, red-hot rampage, as a cold voice from his past reminds him of a devastating curse, while Faye desperately screams for Louis to hold on and resist the dark magic, leaving our boy completely disoriented as he struggles to comprehend his own actions, wondering if his dream of becoming a warrior is already doomed by cruel fate. Memories of terrified enemies calling him a monster only fuel his inner frustration, but his heart keeps pumping with a stubborn, furious rhythm that refuses to give up, prompting him to reject this tragic destiny with a highly confident, defiant smirk, vowing to literally smash his cursed fate into a million tiny pieces, before his real journey officially begins inside the prestigious Candria Arcanist Academy. Louis stands before the massive Candria Arcanist Academy, completely blown away by its sheer scale. Looking at the endless crowd of applicants, 13-year-old Louis Kirill prepares himself for the upcoming exam. But just as he takes in the view, a familiar voice suddenly calls out his name. His out-of-breath father and worried mother finally catch up, gasping for air after chasing him down. His mother frantically checks on him, reminding him to keep his real hair and eye color hidden. She clutches her chest in pure anxiety, terrified that someone might target him during the brutal trials. Fortunately, his father reassures her, pointing out that mastering magic is the only way to save their son, especially since this is the only academy in the entire empire that actually allows commoners to apply, making the legendary Candria Arcanist Academy the ultimate destination for anyone trying to rewrite their destiny. An elite institution guarded by a massive knight statue where only the strongest will survive the cut. As the ultimate training ground, this academy boasts grandmasters who teach the empire's most elite magic, proving that even commoners can rise to become legendary guardians of the realm, with almost every single one of those legendary heroes graduating from this very institution, which is why Julian confidently adjusts his glasses, declaring it the perfect place for the boy, prompting young Louis to eagerly hold his mother's hands and vow to become a grandmaster, aiming to gain enough power to officially buy back their beloved orphanage from the church. Hearing this, Luciella stares at him in absolute shock, completely overwhelmed by his selflessness, before she bursts into tears, blaming herself for being unable to cure his violent magical rampages. But Louis just smiles warmly, reassuring her that he is deeply grateful just to be alive, remembering how his previous life was a miserable, bedridden nightmare of asthma and parental resentment. Despite being paralyzed, our protagonist poured his entire soul into his passion for martial arts, eventually writing a groundbreaking doctoral thesis on reviving ancient combat techniques from his wheelchair. But a corrupt scholar stole his life's work and left him broken on the floor, proving that society has absolutely zero respect for a brilliant mind trapped in a broken body. And to make matters worse, even his own parents abandoned him in his final moments, leaving him to die with a desperate wish for a healthy body and a loving family. Fast forward to a brand new fantasy world, where destiny decides to give him a second chance, though a local nun immediately hesitates to take him in due to his unusual features, while our protagonist slowly opens his eyes, completely bewildered to find himself alive once again, only to hear the panicked nun warn that this mysterious baby might bring absolute ruin. Defending the newborn baby, the kind nun decides to protect him from the world's cruel judgment, officially naming him Louis Kirill and giving him the fresh start he always wanted, complete with a loving family and a perfectly healthy body to pursue his martial arts dreams, until a rude noble suddenly shoves his mother aside while yelling at them to move, sending her crashing to the hard stone floor as Louis and his father cry out in panic, while the arrogant snobs mock the very idea of a commoner ever becoming a grandmaster. Hearing this, a dangerous spark ignites in Louis's eyes as his blood begins to boil, especially when the noble dramatically wipes his hand, complaining about touching a filthy commoner, pushing our boy to his absolute limit as he prepares to throw a devastating punch. But a firm hand suddenly grabs his wrist, stopping his rage before he ruins everything. Just as Louis is about to fight, his father grabs his arm and tells him to focus, while his mother sternly reminds him of his promise to stay out of trouble and just endure it, forcing our boy to swallow his pride and keep his fists to himself for now, before he sighs and apologizes, letting his parents ease his tension with a warm shoulder pat. Meanwhile, the arrogant nobles walk away, completely oblivious to how close they came to getting absolutely pulverized. But the tense atmosphere instantly shifts as the crowd parts for a highly anticipated VIP arrival, introducing Kane Aranka, the sparkling heir of a legendary family who practically radiates pure main character energy. Seeing this elite prodigy only fuels Louis's burning desire to prove that commoners can reach the top. prompting him to confidently reassure his worried mother that he will absolutely crush this entrance exam, vowing to climb the ranks and eventually claim the legendary title of Grandmaster. Meanwhile, the arrogant noble sneers about his plans to master magic and rule the academy. But Louis ignores the noise and sprints forward, determined to protect his new family, clutching his official registration card with a highly confident smirk on his face. While back at the gates, the worried nun frets over the insanely low passing rate. Julian simply smiles, knowing the kid is far too stubborn to ever back down, leaving them with no choice but to support his wild dream of reaching the top. Stepping into the massive exam hall, Louis realizes he is surrounded by much older applicants, before a powerful presence suddenly floats down from the sky to address the crowd, revealing Aronian Smith, the legendary principal who will be personally supervising this year's trials, sending a wave of shock through the applicants while our boy calmly analyzes the competition. To understand the stakes, you have to look at the world's brutal power hierarchy, where grandmasters sit comfortably near the top as the ultimate privileged class of society, prompting the principal to float in the air and announce the first brutal stair-climbing test. These coveted passing tokens are hidden directly behind the Academy's elite senior students, meaning only 1,000 lucky applicants will actually secure a spot for the next round, with a cold warning that the exam ends the moment those passes run out. This massive crowd of hopeful fighters instantly charges forward with absolute chaos breaking loose. Several overconfident applicants sprint up the steps, thinking this trial will be a total breeze. But Neil Gunn simply smirks at them with a terrifyingly dark and welcoming grin, before unleashing a massive wave of red energy to drag them straight into hell. A massive shockwave of pure pressure suddenly erupts, catching the overconfident applicants completely off guard, sending them screaming in absolute terror as the overwhelming force threatens to tear them apart, with multiple crushed applicants instantly disqualified before they can even take a single step. This remaining crowd trembles in fear, realizing this terrifying display came from the legendary Lord Sheath. Sheath merely smirks at their pathetic weakness, wondering if they can even handle basic killing intent. But amidst the panicked whispers, a calm presence slowly cuts right through the terrified crowd, as Louis casually walks forward, explaining that this was just a simple aura test to weed out cowards. He notes that anyone lacking a strong will is bound to fail this exam immediately. Looking up at the stairs where the elite senior stands tall above the fallen applicants, this prompts the elite senior to smile down with amusement, impressed by our boy's backbone. Neil Gunn sneers down from the steps, declaring that this prestigious academy has absolutely no room for commoners. But Louis just stares back with intense determination, refusing to let some arrogant senior intimidate him, prompting Neil Gunn to narrow his eyes in sheer annoyance at the kid's stubborn defiance, before he unleashes a massive, towering pillar of red energy to force everyone to their knees. The overwhelming pressure instantly crushes the other applicants, leaving them gasping for air on the floor. Yet Louis stands completely unfazed, casually watching the destructive aura wash right past him, only to smirk and ask if this pathetic display is really the senior's best effort, recalling his brutal training nights in the dark forest where he fought for his survival. Back then, he routinely faced hordes of vicious monsters that actually wanted to tear him apart, making this senior's cheap aura trick look like absolute child's play in comparison. Neil Gunn lunges forward with a fiery red punch, determined to crush the commoner once and for all, but Louis just smirks confidently, declaring that this pathetic level of pressure won't work on him, before he suddenly bursts forward, unleashing a brilliant blue aura that completely shatters the heavy atmosphere, causing their opposing energies to violently clash in a massive blinding explosion of red and blue light, as our boy vows to show these arrogant nobles exactly what they are up against, throwing a devastating punch of his own that carries the weight of his brutal survival training, with his eyes glowing with a terrifyingly cold and genuine killing intent that freezes the air, surging straight through the senior's defensive aura like an unstoppable, high-speed magical bullet, leaving the surrounding crowd of applicants staring in absolute, jaw-dropping disbelief at the insane display, while Neil Gunn can only gasp in sheer terror as the commoner's fist closes the distance. Lewis's bandaged fist stops mere inches from Neil Gunn's face, completely freezing the arrogant senior in place, before the sheer force of the shockwave blasts Neil backward, sending him crashing onto the stone floor, while our boy merely glares down with a cold, terrifying gaze that silences the entire arena, leaving William Aranka staring in absolute disbelief, completely unable to process the commoner's insane physical strength, as the surrounding crowd erupts into panicked whispers about how a kid could fight without magic. But Louis simply ignores the noise and walks right past the stunned noble to claim his prize, stepping up to the massive wooden board where the coveted passing tokens are displayed, and calmly reaching out to grab one of the magical cards to secure his official spot, which absolutely infuriates William Aranka, who refuses to let a filthy commoner outshine him like this. Driven by pure jealousy, the bitter noble suddenly unleashes a deadly red slash straight at Lewis's back. Sensing the danger, Lewis spins around with his bandaged fist raised to intercept the cowardly sneak attack, and with a massive clash, he blocks William Aranka's deadly red slash using nothing but raw physical strength, leaving the arrogant noble completely paralyzed with shock that a commoner could stop magic with bare hands. Fortunately, the principal steps in and places a hand on William's shoulder, declaring that Louis officially passes, calmly reminding the bitter noble that the academy treats commoners and elites equally in the face of monsters. Having no other choice, William bows deeply to apologize while our boy quietly stands nearby and watches. This prompts the principal to turn to Louis, offering his formal congratulations for surviving the brutal trial, only to lean in close and whisper a chilling warning about his highly unusual hair color, sending a sudden wave of tension through the air as Louis processes the mysterious threat, before he calmly looks up, asking the examiner what exactly those ominous words are supposed to mean. As Louis processes the cryptic warning, a firm hand suddenly pats his shoulder from behind, with the principal offering to brew a special potion to hide the kid's highly unusual traits, leaving Louis highly suspicious of his motives but entirely focused on surviving the upcoming second exam. And as our boy walks away, William Aranka stands in the background, trembling with absolute rage, glaring daggers at the commoner who dared to completely humiliate him in front of everyone. This bitter noble grits his teeth, swearing to make Louis pay for ruining his perfect reputation. But there is no time for grudges as the remaining applicants gather in the massive second arena, where only 1,000 elite survivors remain out of the original 20,000 hopeful examinees, prompting another arrogant noble to deliberately shove past Louis in a pathetic attempt to intimidate him, before turning back to hiss a childish warning that no one will protect him next time. Louis merely stares back with a cold, unbothered expression that completely infuriates the surrounding nobles, while William's loudmouthed lackey steps up to claim that Louis only survived thanks to the principal, prompting our boy to let out a quiet chuckle before calling them absolute idiots, which instantly sends William Aranka's fragile ego straight into a state of pure, unadulterated shock. Calmly, Louis points out that the legendary Grand Master clearly has far better judgment than them, driving the bitter noble to step right into his face with a raised, trembling fist. But Louis just offers a smug, mocking smile that practically begs for a fight, causing William's eye to twitch with a level of rage that could bypass any logic, before he finally snaps and throws a magic-infused punch straight at our boy's face, only for Louis to effortlessly catch the strike with his bare hand without even blinking. Instead of taking the hit, Louis casually taps a precise pressure point on the noble's arm, leaving William completely frozen in place as his entire body suddenly refuses to cooperate. Turns out our boy just unleashed a legendary martial arts technique called Meridian Severance, which instantly sends the arrogant noble crashing hard against the cold stone floor, prompting his loyal lackeys to scream out in absolute panic at the sudden defeat, while William slides helplessly across the arena like a discarded sack of potatoes. This ridiculous display of raw physical dominance leaves the surrounding examinees completely speechless, as the bruised noble struggles to even lift himself off the ground, only to realize he has completely lost all feeling in his trembling right arm, driving him to furiously accuse Louis of using poison before threatening to report him. William Aranka trembles on the floor, finally realizing that Louis used pure martial arts instead of poison, while our boy stands tall and admits he was actually holding back to avoid any unnecessary trouble, declaring that only those prepared to get hit themselves have any right to throw a punch. But before he can deliver another beatdown, a firm hand suddenly grabs his bandaged wrist, revealing Kane Aranka, who calmly reminds Louis that they are still in the middle of an exam, asking the hot-headed commoner if he is truly prepared to get disqualified over some pathetic trash. Louis silently glares back, realizing the blonde noble actually has a very valid point, so he casually walks away while William's furious lackeys scream threats at his back, prompting Kane Aranka to turn around and coldly warn the loudmouths to back off immediately, leaving the terrified lackeys with no choice but to swallow their pride and retreat in silence. This defeated noble storms off in a huff, completely fed up with the entire situation, muttering to himself that both arrogant nobles and commoners are nothing but absolute trash, while Louis quietly watches from the sidelines, fully agreeing that status-obsessed elites are all the same. Suddenly, Kane Aranka approaches our boy, praising his incredible physical strength and fearless attitude, before extending a friendly hand to offer a surprise partnership for the next round. But their conversation is instantly interrupted by a group of starstruck female applicants, who immediately swarm the young prodigy to beg for a spot on his team, as nearby examinees whisper about how teaming up with the Aranka heir guarantees a pass. Louis merely scoffs at the ridiculous hype, completely uninterested in joining the chaotic popularity contest, right before a massive swirling vortex of blue magical energy suddenly erupts in the arena. Floating high above the arena, the blonde examiner congratulates the remaining examinees for surviving the first brutal trial, before snapping his fingers to announce that the second stage is officially the power test, which immediately causes glowing yellow crests to manifest directly on the chests of the confused applicants, leaving Kane Aranka completely baffled as he stares down at his own glowing earth attribute mark. Suddenly, a massive wave of crushing pressure hits the room, making everyone's bodies feel incredibly heavy, as a giant glowing magic circle erupts across the entire floor of the training arena, with the examiner explaining that they must fight each other while enduring this intense gravity magic, forcing the arrogant nobles to their knees as they struggle to even support their own weight. But amidst the groans of agony, one shocked examine points out someone moving completely unfazed, leaving Kainaranka staring in absolute disbelief as Louis casually walks around like it's a sunny stroll. Kainaranka stares in absolute disbelief, his eyes wide as he tries to process the impossible sight. Heavy, crackling footsteps echo through the silent hall as Louis effortlessly shatters the gravity-laden stone floor, while the stunned crowd watches our boy casually stroll up the stairs to reach the main stage, prompting the blonde examiner to smile, thoroughly amused that the kid took first place yet again. Standing tall amidst the crushing pressure, Louis remains completely unbothered as glowing energy wraps around his body, leaving Kainaranka to admit that even his own elite master-level training barely keeps him upright, as the rest of the exhausted applicants collapse, failing the test before it even officially begins. Suddenly, the blonde examiner raises his hand to unleash a brilliant flash of blue magical energy, summoning a massive rack of high-grade weapons right in front of the few remaining standing examinees, before announcing that anyone who wants a weapon can freely choose their tool of destruction. Louis firmly grips a standard training sword, ready to face whatever the exam throws at him, effortlessly spinning the blade with perfect form to test its weight and balance, while the other exhausted applicants can barely lift their weapons under the lingering pressure, prompting the blonde examiner to step forward and officially declare the start of the trial before snapping his fingers to summon the first wave of opponents for the examinees. Suddenly, a strange magical distortion ripples through the air, leaving the crowd completely bewildered, as clueless examinees whisper in confusion about what kind of monsters they are facing. But Louis instantly senses the danger and looks straight up toward the ceiling, where several glowing blue spheres of magical energy are rapidly plummeting toward the arena floor, splashing down violently to reveal the bizarre gelatinous creatures they must now defeat. Standing in the center of the arena is a surprisingly cute, bouncy blue slime looking completely harmless. This rules are simple. Blocking earns 1 point, dodging gets 2, and defeating one nets 5 points, with the examiner coldly announcing that only the top 100 scorers will actually survive this round, prompting Louis to narrow his eyes as he realizes the competition is about to get incredibly cutthroat. Meanwhile, the little blue slimes continue to bounce around the arena floor, looking incredibly goofy and weak, leading a couple of overconfident examinees to laugh at how easy their points are going to be. One arrogant candidate draws his massive sword, eager to secure an effortless victory right off the bat, charging straight toward the target with a confident shout while the crowd watches in anticipation. But the cute little slime suddenly narrows its eyes, revealing a surprisingly angry and menacing expression, before launching itself forward like a high-speed rocket, proving these monsters are not to be underestimated. This overconfident examinee barely has time to register the danger before his smug expression completely shatters, as the bouncy blue slime slams directly into his face like a speeding cannonball, leaving the surrounding examinees completely horrified as they realize these cute monsters are actually lethal. And with a series of deafening crashes, the high-speed slimes begin wreaking absolute havoc across the arena floor, sending dust and debris flying everywhere while the terrified applicants struggle to even comprehend the sudden onslaught, until one panicked archer points toward the ceiling screaming a desperate warning to his clueless peers, because a massive rain of gelatinous blue projectiles is now relentlessly bombarding the entire training hall, knocking the exhausted examinees flat on their backs while the academy officials calmly observe the chaotic battlefield. Standing on the balcony, the principal and his assistants begin tallying the pathetic scores of the survivors, while the green-haired assistant quietly notes that this year's roster features some incredibly powerful noble bloodlines, while elite candidates like Kainaranka and Faye easily slice through the bouncy blue monsters. This academy official notes that this year's batch of commoners is surprisingly impressive, prompting the principal to keep a very close eye on our mysterious protagonist. But the assistant quickly points out a highly bizarre anomaly on the battlefield, because amidst all the chaotic fighting, Louis hasn't moved a single step, leaving the surrounding examinees to mock him for being too slow to react, confidently assuming the weak commoner is about to get brutally knocked out, right as a massive slime plummets from the ceiling directly toward his head, hurtling downward like a high-speed magical missile designed to crush him instantly. Yet our boy just stands there with an incredibly calm, unbothered expression. While other examinees struggle to keep up, a high-speed slime rocket shoots right past them, leaving the sword-wielding noble sweating bullets as his teammate gets instantly wiped out, because these bouncy blue monsters are moving way too fast for normal humans to track, sending another overconfident applicant flying through the air like a broken ragdoll. Meanwhile, Louis merely glances over his shoulder, completely unimpressed by the chaotic circus around him, even as 3 massive gelatinous projectiles plummet from the ceiling directly toward his head, prompting a nearby rival to smirk, fully expecting our boy to get absolutely crushed. But Louis doesn't even flinch, his eyes locked onto a sudden flashback of his past, taking him back to a freezing snowy mountain where he faced a group of local bullies, who were nervously clutching heavy rocks, wondering if throwing them at him was actually safe. Young Louis calmly tells the bullies to bring it on, wanting to test a theory. This local troublemakers happily oblige, hurling heavy stones straight at his head with malicious intent, as a barrage of rocks rains down on him from the snowy mountain slope. Our boy recalls a brilliant hypothesis he formulated during his previous life as a modern scholar, realizing he could theoretically bypass normal human limits by optimizing his brain's neural pathways, specifically by instantly transmitting sensory data from his parietal lobe straight to his cerebellum. He stands completely still to collect the trajectory data of every incoming projectile, before his mind calculates the perfect evasion paths in a fraction of a millisecond, allowing him to effortlessly dance through the barrage like a ghost leaving afterimages behind, leaving the dumbfounded bullies staring in absolute horror at his impossible reflexes. Young Lewis wipes his brow in absolute amazement, thrilled that his crazy theory actually worked in practice, while the stunned bullies rush over to beg him to teach them this mind-blowing new technique, prompting our boy to proudly name his ultimate evasion method the Void Combat Calculation, a system designed to predict the outcome of any battle before it even begins. Back in the present arena, Louis stands perfectly still as high-speed slimes rocket past his head, his eyes glowing as his brain instantly calculates the trajectory of every incoming threat, breaking down the physics of the bouncy blue monsters into simple mathematical equations, which allows him to track their exact velocity and acceleration with absolute precision, even when 4 of the gelatinous projectiles launch a coordinated ambush from all sides, because he already knows these fast-moving pests can only charge in straight lines. By calculating the exact bounce angles and speed of the incoming gelatinous projectiles, Louis effortlessly glides through the chaotic battlefield, making the lethal slimes look completely harmless, racking up easy points with every perfect dodge while already planning his next move, as he firmly grips his training sword, channeling his calculated energy into the blade. Leaping high into the air, our boy prepares to unleash a devastating counterattack, slicing through the high-span monsters with a single perfectly executed martial arts slash. This display of absolute mastery leaves Kane Aranka completely stunned, his jaw practically hitting the floor, while the watching Academy officials frantically take notes on the kid's impossible perception skills, realizing his combat talent easily rivals that of the most elite trained fighters. Now, Kane smirks to himself, fully determined to secure this monstrous commoner as his ultimate partner. Lewis suddenly senses another presence approaching him from the side, interrupting his perfect calculation streak as a high-speed blue slime rockets directly toward his blind spot with terrifying speed, prompting our boy to instantly prepare a precise thrust to secure 5Z points. But a sudden rapier thrust pierces the gelatinous monster right before his blade can connect, instantly ruining his mood and leaving Louis glaring at the intruder with absolute cold fury, only to find Kane Aranka standing there with an incredibly smug, self-satisfied grin, casually swinging his rapier with effortless grace to finish off the stolen target, slicing the bouncy blue monster perfectly in half before it can even react. While the other exhausted examines desperately struggle to survive the chaotic slime onslaught, Kane calmly explains that he didn't steal the points from Louis but from their competitors. Kane flashes a smug grin, introducing himself and proposing they team up to steal some easy points, but Louis just stares back with a cold, unimpressed look that could freeze a volcano, prompting Kane to quickly clarify he just wants a high rank and a little friendly competition, eagerly demanding that our boy finally stop holding back and show off his true strength. Amused by the noble's sheer confidence, Louis smirks and decides to finally indulge his persistent new rival, tightening his grip on his training sword as a surge of powerful energy wraps around the blade, while Kane suggests a high-stakes bet where the loser must obey the winner's absolute command. Meanwhile, a group of shady examines watches their flashy display from across the chaotic battlefield, recalling their Falcor orders from Sheath to eliminate Louis before the exam officially ends, as a malicious archer flashes a sinister smile, ready to strike during the chaotic battle. At that exact moment, a malicious archer fires a glowing blue arrow straight across the chaotic arena, while his teammate quickly readies another shot to ensure their target has absolutely no escape. This high-speed projectile streaks directly toward Louis, who is still casually chatting with Kane Aranka, prompting our boy to swing his training sword, effortlessly deflecting the first magical projectile. But 3 more arrows suddenly rain down from above, catching him completely off guard, resulting in a massive, fiery explosion that completely engulfs the spot where he was standing. Kane Aranka gasps in shock as the heavy impact seemingly strikes Louis directly in the back, leaving the smug archer to celebrate his apparent victory, thinking he successfully eliminated the threat. But Louis merely lets out a quiet chuckle, completely unharmed by the sneaky ambush, which leaves the treacherous sniper sweating bullets as he realizes his ultimate attack did absolutely nothing. Louis casually catches the 3 incoming arrows barehanded, completely unfazed by the sudden lethal ambush, leaving the treacherous archers sweating bullets as they realize their sneak attack completely failed. While Kane Aranka rushes over to check on him, cursing the cowards for playing dirty. Infuriated by the insult, the desperate snipers quickly pivot their aim to target the arrogant noble next, as the lead archer channels dark magical energy into his bow to unleash a deadly double shot, sending a barrage of lethal projectiles screaming across the arena straight toward the duo. prompting Kane to showcase his elite swordsmanship by effortlessly deflecting the incoming physical arrows. But he suddenly freezes in terror as a hidden magical projectile slips past his guard, only for Louis to intercept the dark arrow barehanded, blood splattering everywhere as he saves his rival, which leaves Kane completely horrified as our boy calmly explains that he was the true target all along. Up on the balcony, the assistant notes the obvious foul play and suggests disqualifying the snipers, but the principal calmly declines, deciding to let the trash-tier archers suffer their inevitable defeat first. Back on the field, Louis turns to his noble rival with a highly mischievous grin, casually asking Kane if he has ever heard of a little modern sport called baseball, right as another high-speed blue slime plummets from the ceiling to serve as the perfect ball. Winding up his swing, our boy activates his calculation magic to plot the ultimate trajectory, his eyes glowing with electric energy as he locks onto his target with absolute precision, before unleashing a devastating home run swing that connects perfectly with the gelatinous blue monster, launching the terrified slime screaming into the stratosphere with the force of a literal cannonball, sending it hurtling straight toward the cowardly snipers who are about to get absolutely wrecked. This high-speed slime cannonball slams directly into the first cowardly sniper's chest, launching him backward across the arena like a broken ragdoll as he screams in agony, leaving him twitching on the ground with a massive smoking bruise before being instantly disqualified. Smiling at his successful home run, Louis immediately dashes forward to finish off the remaining snipers, who can only stare in absolute horror at their smoking teammate lying unconscious in the distance, desperately scanning the chaotic battlefield as our boy completely vanishes from their line of sight, only for Louis to suddenly drop from the sky directly above the panicked lead archer, swinging his training sword to launch yet another high-speed slime projectile straight at his face, which connects with perfect bone-shattering accuracy before the sniper can even process what happened, sending him flying upside down into the air with his teeth completely knocked out. This lead archer sweats in absolute disbelief as the system officially announces his immediate disqualification, but his panic reaches a whole new level when Louis suddenly whispers right behind his ear, leaving the terrified sniper stumbling backward while desperately warning our boy that the seniors will seek revenge. Before the coward can even finish his threat, a stray foot suddenly trips him from behind, sending him tumbling off the platform as Kane Aranka casually tells him to watch his step. Turning back to Louis, the young noble expresses his gratitude and asks if his hand is okay, prompting Louis to clasp his hand with a smirk, admitting Kane is actually pretty decent for a noble, which causes Kane to proudly explain that he belongs to the legendary Aranka family. These massive clans wield immense power, producing legendary grandmasters and easily rivaling the royal family itself. And Louis has to admit that maybe not all nobles are trash as they fight side by side. Seeing Louis dominate the field, a group of elitist nobles gets absolutely triggered by his commoner status, swearing they won't let some lowborn nobody sweep all the top exam points right under their noses, prompting the entire mob of jealous candidates to charge straight at our legendary duo with weapons drawn, determined to force the talented commoner out of the competition by launching a full-scale group assault. However, Kane's loyal noble allies spot the incoming threat and immediately prepare to defend their young lord, rushing headfirst into the fray to intercept the attackers and turn this exam into a massive brawl, which instantly transforms the structured exam arena into a chaotic, free-for-all battlefield where everyone is fair game. Meanwhile, Faye watches the escalating madness with a highly mischievous grin, thoroughly enjoying the chaotic spectacle, as she drags a determined Miliana into the fight to teach those arrogant nobles a painful lesson. Amidst the madness, Louis effortlessly flips through the air, realizing that scoring any more points might actually be overkill. Louis effortlessly glides across the floor, dodging the sudden chaos with his signature casual grace, while Faye happily joins the fray by using her staff to trip up an unsuspecting noble, prompting Miliana to unleash a massive energy slash that sends another challenger flying into the air. But the real terror begins when Neil Gunn steps forward with his massive warhammer, letting out a wild, maniacal laugh as he realizes the exam has devolved into pure chaos. Because to a battle maniac like him, crushing actual people is infinitely more entertaining than hunting slimes. Wielding his giant weapon with terrifying ease, Neil Gunn leaps straight into the thick of battle, spinning his massive hammer in a devastating circular arc that creates a literal wall of wind, screaming for everyone to get out of his way as his eyes glow with bloodlust, before turning himself into a human hurricane that sends examinees flying in every single direction. Wielding his massive warhammer, Neil Gunn prepares to unleash another devastating strike across the arena, leaving a trail of unconscious examinees scattered across the floor after his brutal rampage, prompting the worried assistant to ask the principal if they should finally stop the madness. But the green-haired instructor warns that disqualifying all these elite noble candidates could cause major political issues. This principal merely smiles, confidently declaring that the academy operates strictly under its own absolute rules. Suddenly, a massive pillar of golden light erupts from the ceiling, completely halting the chaotic brawl, as the principal descends majestically to announce that the second phase of the exam is officially over. With a snap of his fingers, he promises to release the official scores and rankings later, instantly dissolving the protective earth magic and leaving the exhausted examinees to collapse collapse onto the floor. Fortunately, the academy staff quickly arrives to distribute glowing green healing potions to the battered survivors. Louis examines the glowing green potion in his hand, absolutely amazed by its mysterious magical healing properties. Cheapskate despair immediately kicks in over the price, right as Kane casually slaps a hand on his shoulder. Smugly reminding our boy about their bet, the noble promises not to bully him after his inevitable victory. Suddenly, an academy instructor summons a massive glowing scroll to officially announce the highly anticipated exam rankings, prompting Kane to eagerly ask Louis what rank he managed to secure on the giant leaderboard. Mocking laughter immediately erupts from the arrogant nobles, who point out that our boy's name is completely missing. But the announcer quickly interrupts, revealing that the top 5 candidates actually shattered all previous academy records. Starting with the quiet prodigy Miliana Royce, who easily secures the 5th place spot with her impressive performance, followed by a highly disappointed Kane Aranka, who lands in 4th place despite his legendary family name. While the fiery Faye Durahan proudly claims 3rd place, leaving everyone wondering who took the top 2 spots. Louis starts sweating bullets, genuinely wondering if his epic slime baseball stunt got him disqualified from the exam. But the announcer dramatically pauses, building up the suspense before revealing the 2nd place winner, which turns out to be Louis himself, shattering expectations with a massive score of 887 points, leaving Kane absolutely speechless as he realizes the mysterious commoner he teamed up with is a literal monster. Accepting his defeat, the noble asks what command he must obey, but Louis casually postpones the payoff, right as the announcer prepares to crown the absolute champion of the entire entrance exam, revealing that the terrifying battle maniac Neil Gunn snatched 1st place by a single solitary point, who looks down at the crowd with a bloodthirsty grin, eager to crush these interesting new rookies, sending shockwaves through the arena as the elitist nobles realize 2 commoners just completely dominated the leaderboard. While Miliana looks on with deep concern as Faye's gauntleted hand trembles with intense competitive excitement, Faye grips her spear with a competitive smirk, absolutely dying to test her skills against the champion. Meanwhile, a group of salty noble candidates stands in the corner, bitterly complaining about their humiliating defeat, with their leader furiously pointing fingers and calling everyone a complete disgrace to their highborn status. Up on the balcony, the assistant points out that commoners taking the top 2 spots is completely unprecedented, prompting the principal to explain the real reason why their association funds so many orphanages in the first place. Because true strength has absolutely nothing to do with noble bloodlines or fancy family names. Raising his arms, the principal loudly commands all the passing candidates to proceed to the next venue. As Kane catches up to Louis, curiously wondering which of the 2 top scorers is actually stronger, but our boy merely shrugs it off with a casual sip, leaving the ultimate answer for another day. Soon the remaining examinees arrive at a massive forest clearing to begin their highly anticipated final exam. This final stage of the entrance exam is officially announced as a brutal emblem battle royale, with the examiner floating high above the crowd to explain the rules of this chaotic survival game, explaining that magical emblems will be distributed before everyone is teleported randomly into the deep woods, leaving Louis and Kane to receive their glowing targets as the rules are laid out. Warning that losing your emblem means instant disqualification, with only the top 10 securing academy admission. Kane warns Louis that they must split up, since the high-ranking students will be targeted first, but our boy merely smirks, realizing the academy released the rankings specifically to paint giant targets on them, as the examiner gives the final signal for the examinees to unleash their full power, teleporting Louis deep into the quiet forest where he prepares to secure his victory no matter what, only for a hostile challenger to immediately step into his path and call him a filthy commoner. A beefy noble candidate wielding a massive battle axe blocks Louis's path, sneering about his previous humiliation, but our boy merely glances back with a look of absolute unbothered indifference, as 2 more armed lackeys emerge from the trees to completely surround him in the clearing. Suddenly, a sharp clicking sound from above catches Louis's attention, prompting him to look up, revealing a hidden sniper perched on a tree branch with a loaded crossbow aimed at his head, instantly making Louis realize that the corrupt academy staff must have leaked his exact coordinates. Before he can even process the betrayal, the axe-wielding noble leaps high into the air, bringing his massive weapon down in a devastating strike that shatters the earth but misses entirely, while the other 2 spear-wielding attackers charge forward in tandem to finish off the dodging commoner, only for Louis to effortlessly backflip into the air, leaving his clumsy completely empty-handed. Louis is dodging in midair as a green magical projectile narrowly misses his face, but he quickly recovers and swings his sword to deflect the incoming energy blast, landing gracefully on one knee while trying to determine where that sudden attack came from, right as the arrogant axe-wielding noble screams at him to just give up and die. Suddenly, the entire group of lackeys rushes in at once, forcing Louis to parry multiple weapons, only for another high-speed green magic arrow to streak down from the treetops, prompting our boy to look up in annoyance as he realizes the sniper isn't stopping, raising his training sword just in time to deflect the magical projectile with raw physical strength. At that exact moment, a long-haired spearman lunges forward with a crazed look on his face, unleashing a wind-infused thrust while mocking Louis for being a commoner who can't even use magic. This spearman lunges forward in frustration, thoroughly annoyed that Louis keeps effortlessly dodging his attacks. realizing he can't easily calculate the trajectory of those annoying magic arrows in midair. Louis decides it's time to switch tactics and end this annoying ambush once and for all, planning to use a classic counterattack technique to strike his opponents before they can even land a hit, which means using their own momentum and raw power directly against them with perfect precision. Meanwhile, the arrogant noble leader screams at his lackeys to stop spacing out and attack all at once, prompting the entire group to launch a coordinated, high-speed assault from every single direction, only for Louis to let out a confident smirk, completely unfazed by their desperate group effort. With flawless timing, our boy dashes forward to execute his counterstrike right as they close in, while the axe-wielding noble swings his massive weapon down, foolishly believing he finally has the upper hand. As the massive axe comes crashing down, Louis slides forward with absolute precision, parrying the heavy blade with his training sword to completely redirect the brute's momentum, sending the shocked noble flipping helplessly through the air like a discarded ragdoll. Before the other lackeys can react, Louis sweeps through the clearing to dismantle their formation, disarming the long-haired spearman while another attacker screams in agony from a stray strike. Meanwhile, the annoying sniper perched up in the branches fires another high-speed magical projectile, prompting our boy to lock eyes with his captive opponent with a cold, calculating smirk, using the helpless noble as a human shield to absorb the sniper's deadly green arrow. This bleeding spearman collapses to the dirt in absolute agony, leaving Louis holding his stolen weapon, which he casually rests over his shoulder while glaring up at his next target. Louis swings his stolen spear to unleash a massive upward crescent of golden energy, which blasts straight through the treetops and blows the annoying sniper right out of his hiding spot, allowing our boy to effortlessly blitz past the remaining lackeys before they can even register his movement, snatching their glowing emblems right out of their hands in one swift, fluid motion, leaving the defeated nobles groveling in the dirt while Louis casually pockets his new loot. Terrified by this sudden turn of events, the bleeding noble leader desperately orders a full-power magical assault, only for a familiar, smug voice to interrupt him from the shadows of the canopy, as another unconscious lackey suddenly crashes face-first into the dirt right in front of Louis. It turns out Kane Aranka is lounging on a nearby branch, casually tossing away his captured crossbow, sending the noble leader into a total panic as he realizes his backup was already wiped out. Kane smugly explains that he forced the ambushers to spill their entire plan before taking them down, prompting the enraged noble leader to scream in absolute desperation that he will take them both down, only for Kane to casually knock him cold with a swift, brutal strike from behind. Louis sighs in relief seeing his ally safe, while the noble complains about the loud racket, casually tossing over the stolen emblems as if taking down elite candidates was just a minor chore. But our boy politely declines any further help, determined to handle his own battles from here on. Suddenly, slow clapping echoes from the shadows of the trees as a familiar warrior steps into view, revealing the fiery Faye Durahan, who brandishes her spear and loudly demands a duel on the spot. This noble heir quickly warns Louis about her identity, noting she is the daughter of a legendary grandmaster, which makes our boy ask if they are friends, earning a highly offended and hilarious denial. Kane reluctantly admits he previously lost to Faye, prompting Louis to tease him about his poor defense. Annoyed by their banter, Faye demands a fight while Kane warns Louis about her apprentice-level magic skills. She mockingly calls them cowards for trying to flee, instantly triggering Kane's fragile noble pride. But Louis steps forward with a confident smirk, eagerly accepting her challenge to test her legendary family's strength. Thrilled by his compliance, the fiery warrior promises to keep things fair by fighting without using any magic, launching herself high into the air to execute a devastating aerial strike directly at our boy, who calmly tracks her high-speed descent with absolute focus and razor-sharp reflexes, meeting her powerful downward thrust head-on with a perfectly timed block that shatters the surrounding air, leaving Faye thoroughly impressed by his raw physical strength as she flashes a competitive grin, while Louis stands his ground completely unfazed, ready to show her what a commoner can truly do. Faye spins her spear with a confident grin, ready to push her opponent to his absolute limits, but Louis quickly reacts, deflecting her high-speed thrusts with his training sword in a flash of steel, prompting the fiery warrior to unleash a massive wind slash as she eagerly calls for more action, leaping high into the sky to prepare her ultimate devastating signature move called the Sacred Lance, which crashes down in a massive explosion of dirt and energy that completely shatters the forest floor. This colossal shockwave ripples through the trees, catching the attention of two nearby Academy staff members, who immediately recognize the legendary Durahan spear technique and praise Faye's flawless speed and raw power, confidently predicting that the impressive commoner boy will inevitably lose to such an elite noble lineage. Right as the principal floats down from above, prompting them to ask for his expert opinion, only for the leader to admit that while he likes Louis, the kid simply cannot win. This examiner thoughtfully strokes his chin, musing that while battle requires sheer will, some gaps can't be bridged, as a massive cloud of dust erupts across the clearing, leaving Louis to watch the incoming storm. Out of the smoke, Faye plunges downward like a meteor, unleashing her devastating Sacred Lance technique, sending a barrage of high-speed spear thrusts raining down to completely overwhelm our boy's defenses. But the fiery warrior quickly grits her teeth in frustration as her ultimate ultimate move misses its mark. Sensing his chance, Louis unleashes a mysterious runic power, his eyes glowing as magical energy swirls around him, catching Faye completely off guard as the glowing runic force suddenly binds her weapon in place. Seizing the momentum, our boy leaps high into the air to clash blades with the legendary Grandmaster's daughter, forcing Faye to bitterly brace herself against the sheer overwhelming weight of his counterattack, only for Louis to effortlessly flip over her head, leaving her swinging wildly at empty air. Louis lands gracefully after his mid-air flip, keeping his eyes locked on his fiery opponent. Faye smiles in genuine admiration, admitting even the top noble prodigy couldn't dodge her strikes. But our boy casually shrugs it off, claiming her moves are easy to read with basic observation. Annoyed by his calm demeanor, the red-haired warrior channels her fiery energy into another devastating assault, unleashing a massive burst of power that completely shatters the ground beneath their feet. Leaping high into the air to execute her ultimate crescent-shaped aerial strike directly at him. Louis's eyes glow with intense magical energy as he instantly begins analyzing her complex spear techniques, noting how the weapon's impressive reach makes it incredibly troublesome to deal with in open combat. Yet he effortlessly slips past her guard, calmly pointing out the fatal flaws in her style, forcing Faye to quickly spin her weapon to create a defensive barrier of pure energy. Louis spots a critical vulnerability in Faye's close-range defense as her massive spear swings wide, prompting our boy to activate his glowing runic eyes to instantly calculate the perfect timing, leaping forward to unleash a dazzling sword dance that rains down a flurry of strikes. But the fiery warrior merely smirks, completely anticipating his obvious attempt to close the distance. With a swift twist of her wrists, Faye deflects his incoming assault with absolute ease, planting her foot firmly into the dirt to prepare an overwhelming counteroffensive of her own, spinning her spear so incredibly fast that it creates a massive, impenetrable vortex of wind. This sudden defensive wall catches Louis completely off guard, forcing him to halt his advance, while Faye laughs triumphantly, declaring that her legendary family's technique has absolutely no weaknesses, unleashing a colossal storm of golden energy that threatens to blow our boy completely away. This watching examiners pity our boy, assuming his commoner swordsmanship cannot possibly match Faye's elite heritage. But Louis refuses to back down, gripping his training sword tightly as the golden storm rages around him, deploying a flawless defensive barrier of blue energy to completely neutralize her overwhelming vortex of wind. He calmly notes that her massive spear techniques consume way too much stamina over time, meaning a single perfect block will eventually force a fatal opening in her defense. Meanwhile, Faye continues her relentless assault, unaware that her opponent is systematically breaking down her pattern. Right as Louis activates his glowing runic eyes to pinpoint the exact moment she overextends, launching himself forward with blinding speed to deliver what should be the decisive finishing blow, only for his cheap training sword to suddenly shatter under the sheer pressure of her defense, leaving the broken blade to clatter uselessly onto the dirt as his perfect plan instantly falls apart. These two warriors lock eyes in the sudden silence, both realizing how close that clash actually was. Faye openly admits she is impressed, realizing he would have landed a counter if his blade hadn't shattered. Louis casually tosses the broken hilt aside, jokingly complaining about his absolutely terrible luck in this exam. Annoyed by his relaxed attitude, the fiery warrior accuses him of holding back during their entire duel. Our boy merely smirks in response, calmly declaring that it is finally time for him to get serious. This statement leaves Faye completely baffled, pointing out that he literally does not even have a weapon anymore. But Louis simply drops into a flawless martial arts stance, smugly revealing that he actually fights better barehanded. Sensing his sudden shift in pressure, Faye tightly grips her spear while searching for any potential openings. Realizing she cannot afford to wait, the red-haired warrior decides to launch her next explosive assault immediately, planting her foot firmly into the dirt to blitz forward with a sudden burst of fiery energy. Faye charges forward like a human drill, her spear wrapped in a massive vortex of fiery energy. But Louis simply raises his bandaged arm, completely unfazed by the terrifying wall of flames heading his way. Seeing this madness, Kane Aranka screams a desperate warning about the sheer lethality of her spinning charge. Yet our boy merely activates his glowing runic eyes, channeling a mystical barehanded defense technique, as his hands move in a fluid blur to intercept the swirling vortex of pure destruction, effortlessly redirecting the massive spiral of fiery energy away from his body with absolute precision. With a sharp shout, Louis shatters her momentum entirely, leaving the battlefield echoing with his power, which leaves both the watching Kane and the fiery warrior herself completely frozen in absolute disbelief. Before Faye can even process what happened, Louis casually catches her legendary spear tip with his bare hands, leaving the watching principal and his assistant sweating in total shock at his impossible defensive feat. Faye refuses to back down, screaming in frustration as she prepares to launch another desperate strike. She leaps backward to create some distance, swinging her massive weapon in a wide defensive arc. Realizing a single-point thrust won't pierce his defense, she decides to completely change her strategy, planting her feet firmly to unleash a barrage of attacks that will overwhelm him from every side. Louis merely watches her desperate preparations with absolute calm, his sharp eyes tracking her every movement. Suddenly, the fiery warrior splits into multiple afterimages, completely surrounding our boy in a deadly circle. Each clone channels intense energy as they simultaneously plunge forward to deliver a decisive, coordinated strike, sending dozens of glowing spear tips raining down on him from absolutely every single angle. But Louis simply lets out a quiet, confident smirk, completely unfazed by her ultimate multi-directional assault. He instantly unleashes a dazzling multi-armed defense, effortlessly swatting away every single incoming spear strike with ease. With absolute precision, Louis clamps his bare hands onto the spinning shaft of her legendary weapon, completely neutralizing her ultimate multi-directional assault in a spectacular display of raw martial arts mastery, leaving the fiery warrior utterly speechless as she stares at him in absolute disbelief. While the watching principal instantly realizes our boy is using a highly advanced technique to stop the spear, admitting he has never seen anything like it as his assistant sweats over a commoner's impossible feat. Seizing his chance, Louis channels his runic energy and thrusts his palms forward with blinding speed, unleashing a devastating shockwave that blasts the legendary Grandmaster's daughter straight across the clearing, forcing Faye to desperately dig her spear into the dirt just to stabilize her sliding body. As she grits her teeth in sheer frustration, realizing her elite heritage is being completely dismantled, before pointing her weapon forward to demand what kind of monstrous martial arts he is actually hiding. Louis casually explains his parry technique, adding a clever twist to cancel out her spear's rotational force. Faye stands there holding her spear, completely baffled by his bizarre explanation of twists and parries. But our boy just tells her to watch closely as he prepares to demonstrate his next move, leaving the fiery warrior to widen her eyes in absolute shock at his sudden burst of speed. As Louis charges forward with absolute focus, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat, effortlessly slipping past her initial counterstrike and leaving a faint afterimage in his wake. Faye swings her massive weapon to catch him, but she only slices through empty air, while Louis glides around her strikes with fluid, weightless movements that defy all physical logic, prompting the watching Kane Aranka to rub his eyes, wondering if he is witnessing a mere optical illusion. As our boy's elegant footwork mimics a fluttering butterfly, effortlessly dancing through her relentless barrage of thrusts, Faye is sweating and gritting her teeth, utterly baffled as to why her spear can't touch him. Turns out our boy is utilizing the legendary butterfly step, a footwork technique mimicking a master boxer, allowing his feet to glide across the dirt in a rhythm that is completely impossible to predict, which lets Louis slip right past her guard to get dangerously close to the fiery warrior, before he unleashes a devastating barehanded strike, hitting her square in the chest with explosive force. This sheer impact sends Faye flying backward, her legendary spear completely failing to protect her, leaving a sweating Kane Aranka to watch from the sidelines in absolute, jaw-dropping disbelief. While even the stoic Academy examiners find themselves completely stunned by this ridiculous turn of events, admitting that almost nobody in the entire Academy could ever hope to overpower Faye without using magic, as Louis stands tall in his combat stance, proving he is an absolute genius of hand-to-hand combat. Refusing to stay down, Faye proudly invokes her elite family name as she prepares to fight on, while Louis simply stares at his fist, completely unfazed by her sudden burst of desperate pride. He realizes that a true noble prodigy won't ever surrender without exhausting every single option, which is exactly why she suddenly abandons her legendary spear to launch a desperate barehanded assault, catching our boy off guard as he realizes she is adapting spear techniques into hand-to-hand combat. She charges forward with absolute fury, determined to reclaim her honor with one final explosive strike. But Louis merely drops into a classic Wing Chun stance, ready to meet her head-on, executing a flawless deflection technique to effortlessly redirect the sheer force of her incoming fist, leaving the fiery warrior completely shocked as her ultimate crushing fist misses its mark entirely, before our boy swiftly counters with a devastating blow that sends her flying across the dirt. Louis examines his bandaged hand, realizing her barehanded strike carried a force similar to a 1-inch punch. But Faye refuses to back down, proudly declaring her family's martial arts extend far beyond spear techniques, charging forward to unleash her devastating third crushing fist technique in a flurry of fiery strikes, prompting our boy to casually succumb his boxing stance as a spectral champion manifests behind him, sending their rapid-fire punches colliding in a spectacular explosion of red and blue energy waves, while Louis grins like a maniac, absolutely thrilled to finally face an opponent who can push him, causing his heart to pump with pure adrenaline as his body demands even more excitement, right as his eyes lock onto her with an intense, glowing red runic pattern, unleashing a terrifying dark aura that manifests as a massive demonic shadow looming right behind him, leaving Faye completely frozen in her tracks as she stares at this sudden monstrous transformation. This monstrous red shadow looms over Faye, radiating an overwhelming pressure that completely freezes her in place. Her eyes widen in sheer terror as she realizes her body refuses to obey her commands. Seizing the opening, Louis drives a powerful fist straight through her guard with shattering force, sending the legendary Grandmaster's daughter flying backward through the air from the sheer impact. Meanwhile, William Aranka watches the clash in absolute disbelief, sensing the terrifying power behind that strike, while Faye tumbles violently across the dirt before finally crashing hard into the forest floor, slamming against a massive tree trunk and collapsing to her knees, completely out of breath. Kane Aranka and William Aranka stare at the defeated warrior, unable to process her sudden defeat. as William mutters in sheer disbelief that a mere commoner could completely overpower such an elite prodigy. Before clutching his head in frustration, realizing their entire noble hierarchy is being utterly dismantled. Nearby, a blonde noble named Brian suddenly starts vomiting violently from the sheer pressure, trembling in absolute terror as he admits he has never felt such a sickening sensation, realizing that the monstrous red aura radiating from Louis is far beyond any normal human power. William Aranka slams his fist in frustration, declaring they must eliminate the commoner at all costs, while Brian wipes blood from his mouth, terrified that an ancient legend might actually be true. Meanwhile, Louis charges forward like a red comet, his eyes glowing with absolute malice, leaving a battered Faye to look up in sheer shock as the terrifying pressure closes in, as our boy unleashes a devastating diving strike that completely shatters the surrounding ground, forcing the proud noble warrior to cough up blood from the sheer force of the impact, sending her tumbling helplessly through the dirt while Louis leaps high into the air to finish it. Louis dives down like a meteor, his fist enveloped in a terrifying, crimson aura, aiming to deliver a decisive finishing blow directly onto the battered noble warrior below, leaving Faye to stare up in absolute horror at his impossible speed and power, as the sheer pressure of his descending fist threatens to crush her entire existence. Realizing she will literally be killed if she tries to just take the hit, this desperate warrior summons every ounce of her remaining mana to activate her ultimate defense, unleashing a massive fire-free counterattack to meet his terrifying diving strike head-on, resulting in a spectacular explosion of red and gold energy that shakes the entire forest. But Louise's raw power completely overwhelms her shield, sending her flying backward with a scream, as she crashes violently through the wooden barricades like a broken ragdoll. Louis stands in the middle of a massive crater, the dust settling around him after that explosive clash. But as he looks down, he suddenly realizes something went incredibly wrong during the final exchange. His hand is covered in smoke, and he mutters to himself about the true nature of magic, before Kane Aranka rushes over to check on him, completely relieved that our boy is still standing. But their brief moment of relief is instantly shattered by a cold voice announcing a sudden disqualification, as a smug academy examiner floats down, pointing a finger to declare that Louis is officially out, leaving our boy to look down in absolute shock at his own chest, where his golden emblem is currently burning to ashes from the residual heat of Faye's final desperate fire attack, prompting Kane to step forward and argue that destroying the emblem was a complete accident. But the examiner just sneers, warning Kane not to help a commoner cheat in front of the principal. Neil Gunn smugly orders the disqualified commoner to get lost, completely ignoring Kane's protests. But a sudden bloody voice rings out from the dust, demanding everyone to hold on, prompting both Neil and Kane to snap their heads around in absolute shock, while Louis stares wide-eyed at the battered warrior who is somehow still standing. Faye slowly limps out of the wreckage, her armor smoking as she approaches the group, leaving Neil Gunn to glare in frustration, demanding if she is really willing to get disqualified. This fiery warrior instantly tells him to shut up, fully acknowledging what happened to Louis, before turning to apologize to our boy for accidentally using magic during their intense clash, declaring Louis the true winner and eagerly promising a rematch once they are both enrolled, only for Neil Gunn to mockingly interrupt, waving his hand as he questions their grand plans. Faye pulls out a wrapped white cloth, her battered face showing absolute determination despite her injuries. She thrusts the cloth toward a stunned Louis, declaring it his rightful reward for beating her. Inside the cloth lies a stack of 14 golden emblems, instantly securing our boy's passing grade. Looking back, she argues that this transfer is perfectly legal, leaving Neil Gunn to grind his teeth in fury. Turning to Kane Aranka, the fiery warrior casually calls him a pretty boy to grab his attention. She loudly declares she refuses to let weaklings pass, while the truly strong are unfairly disqualified. With a swift kick, she launches her fallen spear off the dirt and sends it spinning upward. Catching the weapon with a grin, she asks what happens if she simply collects 14 more emblems. Kane smirks and spins his rapier, admitting he was thinking the exact same thing about hunting targets. This duo immediately sprints off into the forest to start their chaotic emblem-stealing spree, leaving everyone speechless. Louis simply smiles despite his disqualification, completely unfazed as the examiner floats down to escort him away. This examiner officially declares him out for losing his emblem, leaving Neil Gunn to watch with smug satisfaction. Neil glares at our boys retreating back, silently swearing that their little rivalry is far from over. Meanwhile, the noble allies grind their teeth in frustration, desperately hoping they never have to face him again. But Neil's thoughts turn dark, realizing a fatal accident during the exam would solve all his problems, prompting him to put his faith in a mysterious assassin named Sheath to finish the job, especially after witnessing the terrifying monstrous red aura that briefly leaked from Louis during the battle. Walking through the grand halls, our boy reflects on how martial arts alone cannot match magic, realizing he must enroll in this academy to learn the secret of fusing both powers together, only to realize his biggest immediate threat is explaining his shredded clothes to his mother. Louis walks home, dreading his mother's reaction to his shredded clothes and bruised face, but his worries are cut short when a masked assassin sneaks up right behind him, only for our boy to effortlessly catch the incoming blade with his bare hand, sending the stealthy attacker flying backward into the forest with a powerful counterstrike, leaving the masked killer to slide across the dirt, utterly baffled by his failed ambush. Louis casually rubs his nose, mocking the assassin because the scent of blood gave him away. But two more masked killers suddenly emerge from the shadows to surround him, prompting our boy to drop into a combat stance as he prepares to go all out, especially after spotting a much more dangerous silhouette watching them from the distant trees. Right as one of the assassins lunges forward with a spinning blade to catch him off guard, an assassin lunges forward with a deadly slash, aiming to take our boy's head clean off. But Louis merely glares back as his eyes glow with a sharp, calculating blue light, effortlessly dodging a flurry of lethal sword strikes with absolute precision and leaving behind multiple afterimages, before casually grabbing the attacker's wrist to completely halt the momentum of the blade and slamming the masked killer face first into the dirt with a brutal, bone-shattering counter, only for another assassin to immediately launch a spinning kick that our boy easily evades. Retreating a few paces, Louis lands gracefully while keeping a close eye on his persistent attackers, prompting the spiky-haired leader Sheath to realize their target's combat skills perfectly match their secret intel, leaving our boy to narrow his eyes in suspicion at the mention of someone leaking his information. Sheath mockingly admits Louis has impressive physical skills before his subordinates suddenly aim loaded crossbows to test his magic defenses. This masked assassins pull their triggers, unleashing a volley of glowing green wind arrows straight at him. But Louis reacts instantly, crossing his arms to guard as the high-speed projectiles graze right past him, only to realize the wind arrows are powerful enough to drill clean holes through solid tree trunks. Recognizing the lethal threat, our boy takes a deep breath to activate his secret breathing technique, channeling his inner chi to explosively boost his physical strength and unlock his body's latent potential, focusing every ounce of his newly awakened energy entirely on maximizing his raw power and speed, before launching himself forward like a blue streak of lightning, tearing up the dirt path below. This assassins mock his desperate struggle, quickly reloading their crossbows to unleash another deadly barrage. But Louis effortlessly weaves through the intersecting energy blasts with impossible gravity-defying agility, leaving the lead sniper completely baffled as our boy vanishes from sight in a split second. Louis vaults off an assassin's crossbow, using it as a springboard to launch himself into the air, while the stunned sniper can only raise his arms in a desperate attempt to block the incoming strike, only to get brutally kicked upside down, sending him crashing headfirst into the dirt with a sickening crunch. Meanwhile, the other masked killers unleash another barrage of wind arrows, but our boy effortlessly slides underneath them, prompting the battered sniper to desperately scream at his comrades to stop the monstrous commoner at all costs. Suddenly, Sheath drops from the canopy, unleashing a lethal descending kick aimed directly at Lewis's head, forcing our boy to quickly block, resulting in a massive shockwave that tears up the surrounding forest path. But the sheer physical force of the impact leaves Lewis's arm trembling in absolute shock, as he is forced to slide backward across the dirt to regain his balance against this new threat. Looking up with a bruised face, he realizes this assassin leader is on a completely different level. Sheath stands with his arms crossed, silently acknowledging that the commoner's physical strength is genuinely impressive, while his subordinates quickly surround the protagonist, aiming their glowing crossbows from every single angle, leaving our boy completely trapped as a barrage of lethal wind arrows converges on him, forcing him to desperately dodge the high-speed projectiles as they slice through the air, until the sheer volume of attacks finally overwhelms him, sending him crashing flat onto the dirt. One of the masked assassins sighs in relief, admitting that just shooting at him was completely exhausting, before pointing his loaded crossbow at the fallen protagonist, wondering how a mere commoner could be this troublesome. Only for our boy's eye to suddenly snap open, glowing with a fierce, calculating blue light, as he reaches up with a bloody face to tightly grab the assassin's weapon, completely shocking his attacker, and delivering a brutal, lightning-fast strike directly to the killer's neck to turn the tables once again. Lewis's hand strikes the assassin's neck with bone-shattering force, instantly snapping his spine. This struck assassin spits out a fountain of blood as Louis stands ready with the captured weapon. With a sudden burst of raw power, our boy unleashes a shockwave that sends the surrounding killers flying. Sheath watches from above, mockingly asking if the kid was just playing dead this entire time. Panting heavily, Louis stands over another fallen body while keeping his guard up against the remaining threat. Slowly clapping his hands, the assassin leader mockingly praises our boy's impressive combat skills for his age. When Louis questions his cold indifference toward his dead allies, Sheath casually dismisses them as mere trash. Refusing to waste any more time talking, our boy hurls the glowing wooden weapon straight at him, only for Sheath to effortlessly split into multiple speed clones, easily dodging the high-speed projectile, before suddenly dropping from the sky to deliver a devastating dark-infused strike directly at our boy. Sheath swings his massive dark-infused weapon downward, mockingly declaring he wants to make Louis his disciple. But our boy barely manages to cross his arms and block the devastating, bone-shattering blow, triggering a massive shockwave that completely obliterates the surrounding forest path and kicks up dust. Sent flying through the air, Louis coughs up blood as the sheer impact overwhelms his defenses, while the assassin leader floats effortlessly above him, completely unfazed by the brief clash. Channeling a massive swirl of dark energy, the assassin admits the kid's physical skills exceed an apprentice, before coldly reminding him that he stands absolutely no chance against a truly high-ranked fighter. With a devastating downward swing, the assassin unleashes a vertical beam of dark energy toward the ground, diving headfirst through the shadows to deliver a final crushing blow to his battered target, resulting in a massive explosion of dark tendrils that completely swallows the battlefield in chaos. Sheath stares down in absolute disbelief, realizing his target is somehow still breathing after that blast. Down in the smoking crater, Louis lies battered and broken but refuses to stay down. Gritting his teeth, our boy forces his glowing bones to move as he swears he won't die here. But Sheath has zero interest in a heroic comeback, coldly raising his hand to finish the job. He channels a massive, swirling sphere of dark magic that blocks out the sky above them. Looking up at the impending doom, Louis can only stare in shock as his strength completely fails him. This assassin unleashes his devastating celestial hammer technique, sending a mountain of dark energy crashing down. Flashbacks of his beloved family flash through his mind, fueling his desperate desire to survive and master magic. Suddenly, a terrifying crimson light ignites in his eye as he resolves to change his fate at any cost. Unleashing a monstrous surge of red energy, our boy strikes back with a desperate, world-shaking punch. Our boy's desperate crimson strike collides head-on with the assassin's massive beam of dark magic, leaving Sheath completely shocked as a massive, blinding explosion of raw power consumes the battlefield. But the sheer backlash leaves Louis lying battered on the cracked ground, coughing up blood. Standing nearby, the assassin leader inspects his smoking weapon with a look of genuine curiosity, admitting that fighting this mere commoner actually feels like facing a high-ranking equal, before realizing that Lewis's terrifying latent power is the real reason his client wants him dead. Raising his dark hammer once more, Sheath prepares to deliver a final merciless execution blow, only for a sudden massive vortex of green wind magic to violently blast the assassin backward, as a mysterious blue-clad ally leaps into the air to shield our battered protagonist from danger, unleashing a series of towering wind tornadoes that completely dominate the battlefield and secure their escape. Sheath stares in absolute disbelief, completely stunned by the sudden turn of events, as a massive vortex of green wind magic violently erupts across the battlefield, violently blasting the assassin leader backward and completely disrupting his dark magic, leaving our battered boy to look up in sheer confusion at his sudden savior, only to see the powerful principal floating down gracefully amidst the swirling green currents, prompting Louis to weakly mutter his name while trying to process the timely rescue, who hands him a glowing green potion to help suppress his unstable crimson energy. And as our boy quickly drinks it down, the principal glares toward their attacker, realizing the assassin leader is already making a desperate escape through the forest canopy, leaving the furious principal to demand who dared to order a hit on his student. Coughing up blood, the defeated assassin warns the principal that he cannot protect the monstrous kid, but the principal merely glares back with cold, glowing purple eyes, completely unfazed by the threat, only for the fanatic killer to flash a bloody grin, declaring this is just the beginning, before his body suddenly detonates into a massive shower of blood, leaving the onlookers completely stunned. This principal narrows his eyes, wondering if the notorious assassin guild is behind this self-destruction, while Louis marvels at the incredible effects of the advanced healing potion he was just given, watching in awe as the glowing green magic completely mends his fractured bones in seconds. Fully recovered, our boy directly asks the principal if his timely arrival was really just a coincidence, narrowing his eyes as he demands to know why the powerful man keeps saving his life, prompting the principal to calmly reply that they will discuss everything once they get to Lewis's home. Louis suddenly panics, realizing how late it is and how worried his mother must be, so he sprints off at high speed, leaving the principal standing alone in the forest. Meanwhile, the principal summons a shadowy snake creature to clean up the messy battlefield, which quickly dissolves the massive crater and the dead assassins into absolute nothingness. Over in a quiet northern town, a peaceful watermill house stands under the full moon, but two corrupt thugs are currently harassing a helpless nun over some made-up taxes. This smug, blue-haired leader grabs her wrist, deciding she needs a little physical punishment, only to get his entire face violently caved in by a sudden high-speed kick, as Louis arrives just in time to send both corrupt troublemakers crashing into the dirt, leaving his shocked mother to gasp in relief as her boy finally makes it home. Miliana gasps in absolute shock, her hands instantly flying to cover her mouth in disbelief, as Louis lands gracefully from his high-speed kick, desperately asking if his mother is alright. But she immediately notices his torn clothes and bruised face, gently cupping his cheek in panic, prompting our boy to sweat nervously while making up a terrible excuse about a tree branch. Suddenly, the trembling thug points an angry finger, accusing Louis of constantly breaking the local rules, threatening to report the incident to the local lord while Louis silently glares back with pure disdain, until a powerful voice interrupts as the principal floats down from the sky like a literal god, introducing himself as Aronian, the legendary academy principal, while placing a reassuring hand on Lewis's shoulder, leaving the corrupt thugs shaking in absolute terror upon realizing they just threatened a grand master. With glowing purple eyes, Aronian delivers a chilling warning, telling them to give the lord his regards. Terrified of the grand master, the corrupt thugs bow deeply and promise to deliver his warning, while Aronian politely introduces himself to Miliana as the troublemakers sprint away in the background, leading the powerful guest inside her cozy home and warmly inviting him to take a seat. Looking around, Aronian spots the automated millstone that operates completely on mechanical genius rather than magic, and as he looks closer, he realizes these brilliant non-magical inventions are scattered everywhere, from the complex wooden support beams to the uniquely designed chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. At that moment, Louis casually adjusts a steaming pipe on the wall, showcasing his homemade heating system, prompting his mother to proudly explain that her brilliant boy built every single convenience in the house, before she nervously asks if Louis caused trouble, though Aronian quickly praises his mind-blowing exam performance, silently marveling at a level of raw talent he has only ever read about in ancient scriptures. Aronian begins explaining the ancient lore, back when humanity was ruled by tyrannical monsters, until a legendary genius emerged to master the elements and defeat the beasts, saving humanity from total extinction and marking the birth of a new era, with scriptures forever remembering this legendary savior as the very first hero. Miliana swoons over the classic tale, but Louis remains skeptical about these old folk legends, prompting Aronian to reveal that the true hero actually took a much darker form, describing a mysterious warrior who possessed pitch-black hair and matching dark eyes, a closely guarded secret known only to the highest echelons of human society. Because while this savior did rescue humanity, madness eventually consumed his mind, driving him to commit an unforgivable slaughter against the very people he saved. Because of this horrific betrayal, the legendary savior was completely erased from human history, leaving behind a terrifying curse of inner madness that manifests as a sinister crimson eye, which makes Louis realize that his own explosive red power might be connected to this ancient plague, prompting Aronian to explain that anyone born with black hair and eyes is immediately marked for execution, before gently patting Louis's head and revealing he knew about the kid's dyed hair all along, sending Miliana into a panic as she desperately begs the Grand Master to spare her innocent son. But our boy calmly steps in to comfort his terrified mother with absolute confidence, pointing out that the powerful principal would have already killed him if that was his goal. Impressed by his wisdom, Aronian smiles and claims Louis has the qualities of a new hero, shocking both mother and son completely as they try to process this massive revelation. Levitating a red apple with a casual flick of his gloved finger, Aronian muses about the world's hidden darkness. This powerful principal catches the fruit, admitting that watching Louis fight today sparked a very sudden realization. Holding the apple up against the glowing full moon, he declares that those ancient savior legends are completely absurd, before looking directly at our boy to offer his guidance for the sake of humanity's future. Without another word, the Grand Master casually tosses the red fruit across the room with a swift flick, which Louis catches effortlessly, his sharp eyes locked onto his powerful guest despite his battered state. Floating gracefully, Aronian explains that since Faye and Cain eliminated everyone else, Louis officially passed the exam, extending an exclusive invitation for our boy to receive personal instruction at the prestigious academy. Louis smiles, questioning if the Grandmaster is really willing to bet on someone who might go berserk, only for the apple to instantly slice into perfect pieces right in his hand, leaving him completely stunned. Aronian's chilling warning echoes in his mind, promising a swift death if the darkness ever takes over. This next morning, Louis is back home discussing the academy invitation with his friend, while his buddy immediately starts stressing over the massive costs of tuition and dormitory fees, leaving our boy to silently ponder his mysterious connection to the legendary hero's cursed legacy. He recalls how the principal easily saw through his dyed hair during their tense conversation, wondering if he can truly trust a man who threatened to execute him without hesitation, especially after Aronian claimed that keeping his mother in the dark would make her a burden. This insulting remark immediately triggers Louis's temper, prompting him to angrily defend his beloved mother. But the principal calmly explains that she must understand the danger to survive their impending trials, before floating gracefully into the night sky, leaving our determined hero with a final warning to get stronger. Louis stares at the distant academy, fully realizing he needs to get a lot stronger, when a little girl suddenly comes sprinting toward him, screaming his name with pure joy, prompting our boy to kneel down and catch Lana in a warm, welcoming hug, as she tearfully begs him to promise he will visit her from the academy, which gets a gentle, reassuring smile from Louis as he promises to return during breaks, sealing their sweet deal with a classic pinky promise to make it official. But their moment is cut short when a villager announces a noble's butler is looking for him, leaving Louis to walk over and meet a very fancy carriage parked nearby, where the polite butler hands him an official invitation from the prestigious Aranka family. Turns out Cain wants to hang out and deepen their friendship before the school year even begins. Accepting the invitation, Louis boards the luxurious carriage as the polite butler guides him inside, traveling all the way to Harzan, the prosperous heart of the powerful Kandria Empire, where the legendary Aranka family holds absolute influence over the entire thriving region, leaving our boy completely speechless as he stares up at their ridiculously massive estate. Spotting his guest from afar, Cain runs out to greet him with a massive wave, immediately throwing his arm around Louis while hyping up their future as academy classmates. Though Louis humbly points out he only passed the exam thanks to his friends, prompting Cain to demand plenty of friendly sparring matches before the school year officially begins. offering to teach him all about magic and academy life in exchange for his time. But their friendly banter is suddenly cut short when an elegant woman approaches them. An elegant, intimidating woman in a purple gown stands before them, looking down with absolute coldness, prompting Kane to quickly step in and introduce the protagonist as his close friend. But his mother instantly shuts him down with a sharp glare over her folding fan, leaving the young noble completely stunned and sweating under her sudden icy hostility. Standing atop the grand staircase, she loudly lectures her son about choosing his companions more carefully, declaring that associating with a commoner like the protagonist is a complete waste of his time, before she looms directly over our boy, demanding to know if he wants money or power. To prove her point, she slides a glittering gold ring off her finger with smug satisfaction, tossing the expensive jewelry onto the floor so it clinks right at the protagonist's feet, as she coldly orders him to pick up his payment and get out of her sight. Kane yells at his mother in disbelief, demanding to know why she would humiliate his guest, but she merely offers a cold, unapologetic glance that leaves her son completely stunned, prompting the protagonist to quietly kneel and pick up the discarded gold ring from the floor. Standing tall, our boy holds up the glittering jewelry and asks if Kane's word is worth so little, which immediately offends the arrogant noblewoman, who glares with pure venom before calling for her guards. She loudly orders them to throw the insolent commoner out of her sight immediately, only for Kane to quickly shield the protagonist, shouting that his friend even defeated Faye. As his mother scoffs in absolute disbelief at what she assumes is a ridiculous lie, gently grabbing Kane's arm, the protagonist confidently declares he will make the young noble even stronger, sending the furious matriarch into an absolute rage over a mere commoner mocking her family. Suddenly, a massive shockwave rumbles through the grand hall, throwing everyone completely off balance, as a towering, majestic warrior in a flowing crimson cape steps through the giant double doors, declaring that having Louis around is exactly what Kane needs to finally grow stronger, leaving the entire room utterly speechless as they try to process this sudden massive endorsement. This legendary Grand Master strides forward with absolute authority, his heavy footsteps echoing through the hall, while Kane's arrogant mother instantly loses her smug attitude, sweating profusely at her husband's sudden arrival, desperately running to his side to argue that associating with commoners will only hold their son back, only for William to coldly brush past her without sparing a single glance, completely ignoring her protests, prompting Kane to bow deeply in respect while welcoming his powerful father back to the estate. Before Louis politely introduces himself, silently marveling at an overwhelming aura that easily rivals the principal's, William looks down at his son, demanding to know if this commoner's skills truly surpass Kane's own. And with a cold glare, the powerful patriarch demands that our boy prove his worth immediately, unleashing a massive blood-red tiger aura that completely fills the grand hall with suffocating pressure, leaving Louis completely frozen as he gets hit by a wave of pure, unadulterated killing intent, while the spectral beast roars and charges directly at him with terrifying speed. This crushing weight slams into Louis, instantly squeezing the air right out of his lungs, prompting our boy to clutch his bandaged arm in agony, desperately trying to withstand the overwhelming force. But William merely stares down with glowing eyes, showing absolutely zero mercy to his terrified guest. As Louis realizes this legendary warrior isn't just testing him, but is actively trying to kill him. Pushed to his absolute limit, Louis's eye suddenly flashes with that familiar, dangerous crimson glow. This sheer weight of the patriarch's killing intent hits Louis like a physical truck, making him feel as though his very soul is being forcibly ripped from his body. But our boy refuses to back down, channeling his own fiery energy to resist. Years of hunting dangerous monsters have built up his tolerance to this level of pressure, allowing him to unleash a massive, swirling vortex of golden flames right back at them. Standing tall inside his blazing barrier, Louis stares directly at the shocked Grand Master, which leaves William utterly speechless as he realizes this kid is no ordinary commoner, especially when a colossal roaring dragon aura begins to manifest directly behind our hero. This legendary dragon fiercely collides with William's blood-red tiger in a battle of pure wills, sending shockwaves through the entire hall as the two monstrous powers clash in absolute silence. Kane yells out in sheer panic as the terrifying clash of auras finally subsides, leaving Louis completely exhausted and forced down onto one knee before the towering patriarch. This young noble rushes over to support his battered friend, desperately asking if he is still in one piece. But William merely looks down with a cold gaze, demanding to know why Louis seeks strength. Looking the legendary warrior dead in the eye, our boy confidently declares it is to protect his family, which gets a long, heavy silence from the patriarch as he processes the kid's unwavering resolve. Turning away, William bluntly orders his son to learn from Louis, calling Kane's own willpower far too weak. This sudden endorsement leaves Kane's arrogant mother completely hysterical, screaming in absolute disbelief at her husband's decision, only for William to cast a chilling glance backward, instantly silencing her with a single terrifying question, and the once smug noblewoman is left trembling in pure terror while her son watches her sudden downfall in silence. Kane Aranka eagerly claps Louis on the shoulder, suggesting they head straight to the training grounds. Walking onto the massive dirt arena, the young noble sincerely apologizes for his parents' terrible behavior. Louis casually brushes it off, gently reassuring his friend that there is no real difference between them. Looking back with a bitter expression, Kane admits his meritocratic father probably prefers Louis over him. Our boy offers some comforting words, suggesting the patriarch was just showing a very twisted form of love. Staring up at the bright sky, the young noble is completely stunned by this wholesome perspective. He quietly repeats the word to himself as his mind drifts back to his brutal childhood. Memories of a life entirely consumed by endless, exhausting training sessions flood his mind, where a younger Cain was forced to fight terrifying beasts with nothing but a training sword, while William Aranka watched from the shadows, demanding his son become a legendary warrior. Cain recalls swinging his sword endlessly as a child, desperate for his father William's approval, while watching other kids play freely, feeling like his own home was nothing but a prison. Even the constant praise from fake adults felt like heavy chains binding his true potential, making him yearn for the outside world where he could finally find true freedom. Dreaming of becoming a carefree bard who could sing without any expectations or burdens, soaring across the vast continent like a bird completely unbound by noble duties. But reality is harsh, and Cain knows he is still far too weak to escape, explaining to Louis that he doesn't actually crave power for the sake of it. Rather, grabbing his sword is the only way to shatter the chains holding him back. Raising his blade high, Cain vows to enter the academy and earn his father's ultimate respect. Cain raises his training sword, declaring his ultimate goal is to finally live a life of true freedom, before flashing a confident smirk and telling Louis that he is counting on him for help, prompting our boy to readily agree as he slides into a relaxed, confident combat stance. Meanwhile, William Aranka stands with crossed arms, demanding his butler present the official investigation results. Adjusting his monocle, the butler reports that Louis is anything but a normal, everyday commoner, noting that the kid broke academy records and even defeated Faye in a magic duel, while also earning the high regard of Grandmaster Aronian during an assassin attack, leading the butler to conclude that this mysterious commoner is a massive magnet for trouble, which prompts him to ask why the patriarch is letting his son associate with him. But William simply smiles, declaring that overcoming dangerous troublemakers is the only way his son will grow. Louis kicks off the sparring match with a lightning-fast strike, easily catching Cain off guard. Watching from the sidelines, William realizes this commoner might actually be the key to his son's growth, prompting Cain to unleash his family's signature wind magic, spinning his blade to build up massive momentum. But Louis just grins, welcoming the challenge and telling the young noble to bring everything he has, while William silently admits to himself that his son has far better judgment than he ever did. Screaming his battle cry, Cain lunges forward with a high-speed thrust that tears through the air. But our boy's eyes instantly lock onto the attack, reading his opponent's trajectory in a split second, effortlessly ducking beneath the lethal wind blade as if he were merely dodging a slow-motion punch, before casually tapping Cain's chin from behind, pointing out that his magic-infused movements are way too linear, leaving the young noble sweating in disbelief as he finally understands why even Faye stood no chance. Louis notices Cain staring at him, casually asking if there is something on his face, before handing over a training sword and questioning if Cain has ever doubted his family's rigid style, which immediately confuses the young noble, who defends his family's legendary secret arts with a nervous scratch. But Louis remains completely serious, suggesting there is a far better path waiting for him, leaving Cain stunned as he imagines the heavy, suffocating shadows of his father and grandfather. Striding over to the weapon rack, Louis confidently selects a pair of lightweight training daggers, turning back with a smirk to ask Cain if he wants to absolutely shock his overbearing father. Meanwhile, William Aranka watches the two boys from a distance, wondering what they are plotting, only to raise an eyebrow in genuine surprise as a sudden surge of energy erupts. As Louis and Cain leap high into the air, dual-wielding blades in a synchronized high-speed assault, Louis holds up a training dagger, explaining that speed is the ultimate weapon in martial arts. He explains that true speed isn't just about running fast, but also rapid decision-making under pressure, and having high natural speed is exactly what makes a thrusting style so deadly. This wind attribute magic pairs perfectly with thrusts, but our boy warns they are incredibly difficult to master, warning Cain that just because his grandfather mastered the technique doesn't mean he automatically can. So to truly maximize his talent, the young noble needs to switch to a specialized style. Demonstrating a dual-wielding stance, our boy asks if Cain is actually ready to make that leap. Cain confidently grabs the daggers, declaring he will do absolutely anything to finally win his freedom. Nodding in approval, Louis whispers some crucial tactical advice about constant movement and strategic retreats. With matching smirks, the two boys prepare to absolutely shock the legendary patriarch with their new style. Leaping from the sky, Louis and Cain launch a coordinated dual dagger strike directly at the Grand Master, as Cain channels his family's signature wind magic to instantly accelerate his descent mid-air, creating a massive, spiraling green vortex that hurtles straight toward the two men waiting below, prompting the panicked butler to cry out in warning while William calmly prepares to block. But Cain moves like a blur, leaving a trail of afterimages as he sweeps past his father, while Louis coordinates his own landing perfectly, keeping the legendary warrior completely surrounded. Explaining that daggers offer unmatched speed, our boy dances around the patriarch with effortless grace, focusing his mind to push the lightweight weapons to their absolute limits, before unleashing a dazzling butterfly footwork technique that completely bypasses William's defensive guard, leaving the normally unflappable Grandmaster genuinely stunned by the sheer speed of their assault. Louis moves like a phantom, his butterfly footwork leaving William completely unable to predict his next move. While Kane surges forward right behind him, his body enveloped in a swirling vortex of green wind magic, launching a flawless pincer attack that forces the legendary Grandmaster to actually put up a defense. And as Kane grips the lightweight daggers, he marvels at how incredibly effortless his movements have become, feeling as though he has finally sprouted wings and escaped the heavy chains of his family's expectations. Absolutely loving this perfect fusion of rapid dagger strikes, advanced combat techniques, and his signature wind magic. This brand new style channels his energy directly into the blades, unleashing a power he never knew he possessed, which leaves William utterly speechless as he watches his son move with such unprecedented speed and grace, his eyes widening in pure disbelief at the sudden terrifying growth of the boy he once deemed weak, as Kane strikes from above, proudly declaring that he has finally found his own true martial path. William scoffs at their sudden coordination, completely unfazed by the incoming dual dagger assault, before unleashing a massive shockwave of dark red aura that violently blows both boys backward. This patriarch stands tall in his swirling energy, mocking his son's choice to abandon the family style. But Louis and Kane quickly recover mid-air, refusing to let this setback halt their momentum. Our boy shouts for his partner to accelerate, prompting Kane to channel his wind magic once more, as the young noble uses the gale to propel himself forward in a blinding burst of speed. Together, they execute a flawless cross-shaped pincer strike, diving directly at the waiting Grand Master, who merely watches their rapid descent with a cold, analytical gaze that shows zero fear, only for the boys to unleash a relentless storm of synchronized slashes from all directions. But William's eyes flash red as he effortlessly blocks the strike, asking if that is all they have. William deflects the incoming dagger strike with a casual flick of his red aura-infused hand, forcing Kane to leap backward to avoid getting caught in the devastating counterblast. And the furious patriarch immediately presses the advantage, calling his son a total coward. But Kane remembers Louis explaining that a strategic retreat is just like a pulled-back fist, meant to build up maximum momentum before launching an even deadlier follow-up strike. Channeling his wind magic, the young noble spins mid-air to unleash a massive, swirling tornado, while our boy joins him on the ground to coordinate their next high-speed assault, leaving the legendary Grand Master genuinely sweating as he struggles to anticipate their movements. Together, the two boys leap high into the air to deliver a synchronized finishing blow, which prompts Louis to later explain a bizarre modern baseball tactic called a changeup. Louis flashes a confident smirk, gripping his training dagger as his eyes glow with intense focus. He lunges forward to demonstrate the technique, catching Kane completely off guard with a sudden strike. This young noble barely blocks the incoming blow, his dual blades clashing in a shower of sparks. Trading rapid blows, our boy effortlessly guides his friend through the high-speed rhythm of dagger combat. Our boy suddenly halts his blade inches from Kane's neck, explaining how speed variations can easily deceive opponents. He explains that even the simplest movements can become deadly feints if the opponent's reaction is delayed. Armed with this new knowledge, the duo launches a synchronized wind-infused assault that tears through the air. William Aranca merely shifts his weight, leaving afterimages as he effortlessly evades their coordinated pincer movement. Refusing to back down, Kane charges forward with a high-speed strike enveloped in swirling green wind magic. But the legendary patriarch easily tracks the blade, coldly dismissing the effort as a meaningless, slow attack. William's eyes widen in sheer shock as a cold blade flashes inches from his face, as Kane sweeps past his father with a wind-infused strike that completely shatters his defense, leaving the legendary Grand Master staring in disbelief at his son's sudden, terrifying speed. And with matching smirks, both Louis and Kane realize their wild plan is actually working, launching a final, coordinated pincer strike to put the patriarch in his place. But William suddenly calls a halt to the spar, his booming voice echoing across the field, forcing both boys to instantly freeze mid-strike, their training daggers hovering just inches away. Turning around with his usual cold demeanor, William calls out to his son in a stern voice, leaving Kane sweating and panting heavily as he braces himself for his father's harsh judgment, only for the patriarch to walk away, warning him not to disgrace the legendary Aranca family name. Kane pumps his fist in absolute triumph, thrilled to finally receive a shred of his father's approval. As the patriarch walks away, the butler scrambles to follow while the two boys celebrate their massive victory. Meanwhile, William reflects on their relentless dagger strikes, hit-and-run tactics, and clever speed variations, staring at his hand as he realizes the tactical brilliance of using strategic retreats to build momentum, silently admitting to himself that he actually just learned a valuable combat lesson from mere children. Back on the field, Louis catches his breath, slightly disappointed their high-stakes training session ended so quickly. But an ecstatic Kane throws an arm around his shoulder, promising our boy a very special reward. Entering the massive Aranca family library, Louis is immediately blown away by the sheer scale of the building, gasping in pure awe at the endless rows of ancient books stretching high into the ceiling, while Kane hands over a heavy box, thanking Louis for helping him finally find his true path. This protagonist gasps in shock as he looks at the contents of the box, finding a massive bag of gold and rare magic books packed neatly inside, as Kane Aranca explains that these secret texts are completely off-limits to commoners. detailing the Academy's strict curriculum and the mandatory magic awakening ritual every student must undergo, which requires candidates to connect with the elements through a sacred statue of Gaia, a luxury that normally costs even noble families a hefty sum of gold, leaving the protagonist sweating over the insane price tag until Kane reassures him it's free at the Academy, though living expenses and book fees still require a pretty penny to get by, prompting the young noble to hand over the heavy box to settle their previous promise. While our boy smiles, realizing he needs to start researching magic pharmacy to make some serious cash, Louis gets a brilliant idea to invent modern items using knowledge from his previous life, turning to Kane to ask if his noble family has any solid connections with merchant guilds. But he keeps his grand business plans a total secret for now, teasing his friend. 1 week later, the highly anticipated entrance ceremony for the Candria Arcanist Academy finally begins. Striding through the gates, Louis wears his new academy uniform with absolute confidence, only to be suddenly sniffed from behind by a mysterious pink-haired upperclassman who assumes his expensive scent means he must belong to some incredibly wealthy high-ranking family, introducing herself as Rose before offering to personally show the fresh newbie around campus, which Louis happily accepts, politely introducing himself to his new guide as Louis Kirill, prompting Rose to secretly wonder if this mysterious boy is actually some noble's illegitimate child. Walking down the grand hallway, Rose begins explaining the Academy's complex political landscape to Louis, explaining that the aging emperor's heirs are constantly clashing with powerful noble families behind closed doors, creating a fierce hidden struggle for resources while regular students just try to pass their classes, because getting targeted by these elite factions or failing to earn credits means instant expulsion. Suddenly, Rose reaches out and playfully lifts our boy's chin with her finger, warning him that everyone is watching his progress before casually asking about his family background, leaning in dangerously close to ask which powerful political faction his family actually supports, only for a hand to suddenly interrupt them, welcoming the record-breaking commoner freshman, as a friendly blonde student named Brian introduces himself, completely shattering Rose's noble theory. Rose stands frozen in utter shock, unable to believe her elite nose totally lied to her. Rose storms off in a huff, absolutely furious that she wasted her precious time on a commoner. But Louis remains completely unfazed, politely introducing himself to the friendly blonde student. Brian just smiles warmly, telling our boy not to worry about her elitist attitude, explaining that the Academy is basically a miniature empire where commoners face a brutal uphill battle. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out as Kane Aranka comes running across the courtyard, prompting Brian to politely excuse himself to greet the other incoming freshmen, leaving Louis standing alone for a moment as he watches the helpful blonde walk away, only for Kane to finally catch up, looking highly suspicious of the guy who just left. This young noble immediately points after Brian, demanding to know what they were talking about, before casually dropping the bombshell that the friendly blonde is actually the Chancellor's son. Kane admits the Chancellor's son seems decent enough, though he still looks incredibly skeptical about the guy. But before Louis can reply, the young noble spots Faye and Miliana walking across the courtyard, prompting Faye to strut over and declare she will only acknowledge Kane if he matches Lewis's strength. She quietly thanks our boy for his help during the entrance exam, which he casually brushes off, though the fiery redhead clenches her fist, determined to defeat him in their next encounter. This declaration immediately triggers Kane, who starts screaming at her while Louis and Miliana watch in exhaustion. Fortunately, Miliana drags the hot-headed girl away to finish registration before a full-blown physical fight breaks out, leaving the boys alone as Kane suddenly hands Louis a massive heavy bag of gold coins, explaining that the massive payout comes directly from their joint venture with the Berna Village Trading Company, where they successfully manufactured and sold Lewis's custom-made perfume to secure an absolute fortune. Kane examines their custom perfume with a skeptical look, doubting if it will actually make them rich, but Louis just smiles while holding a heavy bag of gold, proving his business genius actually works. Walking toward the registration desk, our boy reminds his partner to keep their lucrative business a secret as he steps up to receive his official Academy credit card from a stern-looking staff member. Nearby, jealous students whisper rumors about how a mere commoner managed to enter this elite academy. Kane explains that Sheath was expelled for hiring an assassin guild to kill him, confirming our boy's dark suspicions about who was truly behind that near-fatal ambush in the forest. His friend warns him that Sheath has a powerful older brother named Jess, who might seek revenge. Suddenly, a menacing upperclassman glares at them from across the courtyard with pure, unadulterated malice, and Jess smiles maliciously, promising to make our boy slowly savor despair as school begins. Inside the grand hall of the Candria Arcanist Academy, the highly anticipated entrance ceremony officially begins, as a pompous academy official welcomes the crowd and praises them for surviving the brutal entrance exam, urging the new recruits to study hard and become the future pillars of the empire, before proudly calling up the top-ranking freshman representative, Neil Gunn, to deliver his speech, only for a massive red-haired brute to walk up completely naked with a giant battle axe, leaving the students frozen in absolute horror at his lack of clothes and terrifying aura, while the sweating principal completely loses his mind, screaming in absolute rage at the ridiculous display. Standing proudly in his birthday suit, Neil Gunn immediately calls the entire crowd a bunch of morons, declaring his grand academic goal is to beat them all until they literally wet themselves. instantly triggering a massive wave of outrage from the furious freshmen who refuse to be insulted. Neil Gunn screams at the crowd, calling them all weaklings who only know how to talk big, while the stressed-out principal clutches his aching stomach, already regretting his entire career choice. Suddenly, the naked brute raises his massive battle axe, locking his eyes onto a specific target, hurling the giant weapon straight through the air and sending the terrified freshman scrambling for cover, until the heavy blade crashes violently into the stone floor, shattering the tiles into pieces. Right in front of a completely unfazed Louis, the massive weapon stands embedded in the ground, as our silver-haired hero stares back with a cold, unimpressed glare that speaks absolute volumes. Without warning, a bare foot lands perfectly balanced on the very tip of the axe's handle, revealing Neil crouching naked on top of his weapon while looking down at his new rival, declaring with a maniacal grin that the two of them are going to settle this right now. Kane steps in front of Louis, shielding his friend from the naked brute's sudden provocation, but Neil just crouches on his weapon, mocking Kane for being a loudmouth with zero actual courage. This blatant insult instantly pushes the young noble over the edge, his face darkening with pure rage. Watching his friend tremble with anger, Louis realizes Kane is about to do something incredibly reckless. And sure enough, Kane loses his cool completely and throws a massive punch at the naked giant, only for a firm, bandaged hand to suddenly intercept the strike mid-air with effortless precision. As Louis easily holds his friend back, calmly telling the hot-headed noble to cool his jets, Neil just laughs at the display, calling them both cowards and welcoming a 2-on-1 fight. But before a brawl can erupt, Brian steps in to remind Neil they are fellow commoners, warning the red-haired brute that his selfish attitude will get him expelled from the academy. Neil Gunn scowls in disappointment, completely dismissing Brian as nothing more than a weakling. This blatant dismissal instantly triggers Kane's temper, while Brian and Louis watch the unfolding drama. Nearby, elitist students whisper nasty comments about commoners lacking manners and ruining the academy's reputation, prompting a smiling Brian to crack his knuckles, ready to teach this naked giant a lesson, which only delights Neil Gunn, who eagerly prepares to smash the chancellor's son into the pavement. But a firm hand suddenly grabs Neil's shoulder, reminding him that student fights are strictly prohibited, as the sweating principal lectures the crowd on the strict rules regarding official academy matches, unleashing a terrifyingly dark aura that instantly makes even the wild red-haired brute sweat in fear. Realizing he might actually get kicked out, Neil laughs it off and backs down, casually slinging his massive battle axe over his shoulder as he walks away from the confrontation. Neil Gunn glares back over his shoulder, promising to settle the score with Louis very soon. Meanwhile, our silver-haired hero remains completely unfazed, staring back with a cool and collected expression. Fortunately, the academy official finally wraps up the entrance ceremony, dismissing the students until classes begin tomorrow. Walking away, Louis wonders why the brute targeted him, immediately blaming Faye's hot-headed reputation for the trouble. This accusation prompts Faye to violently chop Kane Aranka's head, screaming at him for almost getting them expelled. Rubbing his sore head, Kane listens as Faye sheepishly admits she actually fought Neil during the final exam, explaining that their duel ended in a draw, but Neil heard rumors that she had lost to Louis. Faye sighs, admitting she would feel terrible if Louis got expelled because of her, while he just smiles. Suddenly, Kane grabs Louis's shoulder to urge them to move along before any more drama unfolds. But as they walk, Louis notices the entire crowd of students glaring at them with absolute hatred. Seeking to stock up on essentials, Louis and Kane head straight for the official academy shop, but our boy instantly gets hit with massive sticker shock the moment he steps inside, as the cheerful clerk proudly presents a basic feather pillow that costs a whopping 30 silver, before offering an upgraded magical herbal pillow for an absolutely ridiculous price of 5 gold coins, prompting Kane to smugly remind him that surviving in this elite academy requires serious cash, leaving Louis with no choice but to settle for the cheapest starter set available, quietly thanking his lucky stars for the perfume profits since he still needs to support his orphanage, especially since essential training potions and magic gear are going to cost him a literal fortune. Suddenly, Faye and Miliana pass by with their own gear, heading off to prepare for tomorrow's awakening ritual, leaving our broke hero crying over his dwindling gold as he resolves to make some serious money. Heading over to the academy dorms, Louis carries his cheap new bed set to find his assigned quarters, hoping he doesn't end up sharing a room with some obnoxious thug or scheming noble. Suddenly, a rolled-up mattress comes flying out of a nearby doorway, nearly taking our boy's head off, prompting a curious Louis to peek inside the room to see what all the commotion is about. Inside, a group of arrogant upperclassmen are cornering a quiet purple-haired student, demanding his absolute obedience. But the freshman just stares back with a completely blank expression, utterly ignoring their pathetic threats, which instantly triggers the lead bully, his face twisting with pure rage at the kid's silent defiance. This angry bully grabs the quiet boy by his collar, screaming at him for picking a fight, only for Louis to tap the bully's arm, sending a sudden jolt of crackling energy through him, leaving the arrogant jerk screaming in absolute agony as electric currents surge violently through his entire arm. Louis calmly reminds the bullies that duels are strictly forbidden, asking if they really want to get expelled, but the gang quickly backpedals, desperately claiming they haven't actually done anything wrong yet. before the furious leader lunges forward, throwing a wild punch under the guise of self-defense. With effortless grace, our silver-haired hero easily redirects the incoming strike while still holding his bedding, sending the bully's fist crashing straight into the face of his own slicked-back lackey, leaving the entire group completely stunned as the lackey goes flying across the hallway. Louis just flashes a smug smirk, innocently asking when he ever laid a hand on anyone, while the bruised lackey weeps on the floor, demanding to know why his boss just attacked him. Seizing the confusion, Louis delivers a swift kick to the leader's leg, channeling a jolt of electricity, triggering a violent muscle spasm that makes the boss reflexively kick his other lackey in the face. This bully leader rolls on the floor in absolute agony, leaving his crew completely bewildered. Before the leader can even recover, Louis sends another precise jolt of electricity straight into his chest, paralyzing the arrogant senior's muscles as raw fear finally washes over his face. With a subtle tap of his foot, our silver-haired hero trips the remaining lackeys, sending the entire group crashing to the floor in a pathetic tangled heap, prompting the bleeding lackey to grab his boss, furiously demanding to know why he keeps attacking them, while the terrified leader desperately points at Louis, claiming the commoner is somehow behind it all. But Louis just flashes an innocent smile, telling them not to blame others for their own clumsy bodies, which only makes the trembling senior realize he is dealing with an absolute monster, as our hero's eyes glow with a chilling light that promises a world of pain. This terrified bully leader cowers on the floor, trembling as Louis slowly two-steps closer with a chilling gaze. But before our boy can finish them off, a quiet hand taps his shoulder from behind. Turning around, Louis stares at the silent freshman, wondering if the kid is actually trying to stop him. Realizing a brawl will get them expelled, Louis points toward the exit and offers the bullies a choice. Naturally, the terrified seniors scramble to their feet and flee while screaming empty threats over their shoulders. With the trash cleared out, Louis introduces himself as the roommate and asks for the kid's name. Instead of speaking, the quiet boy simply bows in deep gratitude while clutching his rolled-up mattress tightly. That is when Louis spots a name tag on the bedding reading the name Kara Candace. As Kara silently walks past him into their new room, Louis realizes his roommate is incredibly mysterious, leaving our hero standing alone in the messy hallway, already wondering what kind of chaos awaits him next. Louis scratches his head in disbelief, realizing his incredibly silent roommate is the ultimate magnet for bullies, while looking at his broken furniture and praying that tomorrow's awakening ritual goes smoothly for once. But deep within the Academy Temple, two mysterious shadows kneel before a massive stone goddess, plotting their next move over a glowing magic circle with sinister, glowing red eyes. This next morning, the freshmen gather inside the Grand Academy Temple for the highly anticipated ceremony. As Louis and Kane look around the majestic hall, completely awestruck by the temple's sheer scale, where the temple instructor proudly introduces the giant statue of Goddess Gaia, the world's legendary creator. Long ago, the goddess established a peaceful realm where humans and monsters were supposed to coexist, until the beasts quickly grew too powerful, with massive dragons claiming absolute dominion over the skies, and terrifying behemoths ruled the land, leaving humanity completely helpless against their overwhelming might. Giant krakens with glowing red eyes dominated the oceans, turning the world's waters into a bloody battlefield, while terrifying demon kings ruled the land, leaving humanity on the absolute brink of total extinction, until Goddess Gaia finally took pity on them, bestowing her divine blessing of the four natural elements, allowing humans to master martial arcane and successfully reclaim their rightful place as the world's rulers. Finishing the history lesson, the temple instructor raises his hand to begin the highly anticipated awakening ritual. But Louis remains deeply skeptical, noticing the official history completely erases any mention of the first hero. As our silver-haired hero ponders this conspiracy, his quiet roommate Kara silently watches him from behind. Suddenly, the temple instructor singles out the two boys, calling them forward in front of everyone. Directing them toward a specific side of the hall, he commands them to follow him immediately. Pointing at two circular stone pads, the instructor orders them to sit and test their magical talent. This temple instructor glares down at Louis, warning him that useless trash has no place here. But our silver-haired hero just stares back, completely unfazed by the blatant disrespect. As a spark of pure animosity crackles between them, the petty instructor declares Louis is completely unwanted, before turning away to command the rest of the freshmen to take their seats for the ritual. Sitting down, Louis watches the man walk away, seriously wondering if this guy has a personal grudge, while the giant statue of Goddess Gaia looms over the hall, surrounded by hundreds of seated students. This instructor commands everyone to close their eyes and focus on sensing the natural elements around them, activating a glowing magic circle in his hands as he begins chanting a prayer to the goddess. Instantly, the entire temple floor erupts into a brilliant display of four massive elemental magic circles, sending beams of elemental energy shooting across the stone tiles to begin the highly anticipated awakening ritual. Goddess Gaia's giant statue glows with a massive beam of light as the ritual begins. Instantly, the stone monument's eyes flash with a brilliant, blinding golden light. A massive projection of the goddess appears, bathing the entire temple hall in divine energy. Shocked students shield their eyes as the sheer pressure of the ritual sweeps over them. This giant glowing projection of Goddess Gaia hovers majestically above the seated freshmen. Seated on their mats, the kids look up at a beautiful sky filled with colorful elemental lights. While one student awakens water, another celebrates as the fire element chooses him. Suddenly, a massive vortex of swirling fire and earth erupts around one particular commoner, leaving the nearby nobles completely speechless as they realize he just unlocked two elements at once, prompting the snobbish elites to wonder if this random commoner is actually an absolute genius. Neil Gunn bursts into a maniacal laugh as his eyes glow with raw, destructive power, sending a massive shockwave of fire and earth swirling violently across the temple floor as he proudly coats his arm in solid rock armor, demanding absolute obedience from the elements. Glancing back over his shoulder, the red-haired brute searches the crowd for his self-proclaimed rival, silently warning Louis not to disappoint him by failing to awaken any magic of his own. Meanwhile, the surrounding students whisper in shock as they realize absolutely no elements are gathering around Louis, leaving our silver-haired hero sitting in a dark, empty void while desperately trying to sense something, wondering if his lack of magical affinity is simply because he originated from another world. He recalls faintly sensing a strange power during his previous high-speed sparring match with Kane, but right now his inner energy remains completely silent, leaving him sweating in pure frustration. Lua feels a dark, suffocating fog wrapping around his mind, trying to block his senses, but our silver-haired hero grits his teeth, refusing to let his mind break so easily, drawing strength from his past life struggles to shatter the mental shackles binding him, before unleashing a massive burst of raw spiritual energy that blows the darkness away, which instantly shatters the petty temple instructor's hidden mental barrier with absolute ease, allowing Louis to finally perceive the breathtaking world of elemental spirits floating around him, as his eyes widen in absolute amazement at the colorful particles dancing in the air. Realizing he can see all four elements at once, he wonders if this is his true potential, while the corrupt temple instructor stares in absolute horror, wondering how the kid broke his trap. Unbothered by the shock, Louis calmly reaches his hand out to claim his first elemental blessing. Louis reaches his hand out toward a floating blue orb, but it slips right through his fingers, leaving our silver-haired hero sweating in confusion as he realizes he can't actually touch the elements, while his spiritual body gets violently tossed around by the chaotic currents of the elemental realm. Gritting his teeth, Louis grumbles about the sheer annoyance of it all, while Kara silently watches him, completely unaware that the corrupt temple instructor is watching from the sidelines with a smug, evil grin, having secretly activated a forbidden confinement circle designed to completely block the connection to the spirits, paired with a magic forbidden orb that actively weakens any elemental bonds a student tries to form. Now, dark energy swirls around Louis as the petty instructor mentally mocks him for making too many enemies, showing off his flashy new rings and silently telling our boy to sit there in despair. While outside, the quiet night sky hangs over the academy as the high-stakes ritual continues inside. Nearby students whisper in mockery, completely convinced that our silver-haired hero is just a talentless nobody, while Louis sits there sweating in frustration, completely unaware that his quiet roommate is watching him closely. But Kara's sharp eyes quickly spot something highly unusual about the stone platform beneath them, prompting the quiet boy to nudge Louis and ask what is wrong with the floor, before bluntly delivering the shocking truth that they have been lured into a deliberate trap. Hearing this, our silver-haired hero glares with absolute fury as the pieces finally click together, instantly leaping to his feet and winding up a massive physical punch to solve his problems, slamming his fist straight into the stone pad with enough raw power to shatter the floor, only to gasp in sheer disbelief as the dust clears and reveals a hidden mechanism, exposing the glowing purple confinement circle that the corrupt instructor secretly planted to sabotage him. Kara warns Louis to hurry up and grab the sabotaged magic item before anyone notices, prompting our silver-haired hero to flash a grateful smile and thank his quiet roommate. But looking down at the shattered floor, Louis wonders why such a trap was placed here, realizing this deliberate sabotage might actually be a targeted hit from someone high up, while the corrupt temple instructor watches them walk away, completely smug about his hidden schemes. Shaking off the distraction, Louis decides to focus entirely on the awakening ritual at hand, unleashing his suppressed spiritual energy as a brilliant blue aura begins to envelop his body, which instantly triggers a massive, swirling vortex of colorful elemental lights across the entire hall, leaving the surrounding students completely speechless as they compare his crazy power to Neil's awakening. As our silver-haired hero stands confidently in the center, ready to claim his true magical potential, this corrupt temple instructor panics in absolute disbelief, wondering how Louis shattered his perfect magical trap. But before he can scheme any further, a gloved hand suddenly taps him on the shoulder. Turning around, the terrified instructor finds the academy principal commanding him to stand down immediately. Realizing he has no choice, the corrupt teacher bows in submission while the principal watches coldly. While the principal walks away, the surrounding students whisper about his sudden interest in our hero. Meanwhile, the instructor fumes in silence, cursing the terrible timing that almost exposed his entire conspiracy. Slipping away from the temple, the corrupt teacher walks alone through the quiet, moonlit courtyard, heading straight toward a fountain where his mysterious co-conspirator Sheath is waiting in the dark. Explaining that the plan failed, the instructor demands they keep their distance to avoid any suspicion, leaving Sheath sitting by the water, glaring with pure hatred as he vows to destroy Louis himself. A mysterious supervisor orders Kylie to monitor Sid's movements to prevent any chaos at the academy. having successfully cleared the obstacles so the silver-haired hero can finally begin his true awakening. As Louis sits in the center of a massive swirling vortex of colorful elemental energy, closing his eyes to fully absorb the overwhelming power flowing through his body. Suddenly, our boy finds himself floating in a starry void, recalling a past conversation with Kane, where his blonde friend explained that the elements are the very foundation of their world. But Louis had questioned why humans must awaken their magic while monsters use it naturally, prompting Kane to explain the secret hidden deep inside every beast's physical body, showing off a glowing magic crystal that naturally stores pure raw elemental energy, which grants monsters an incredibly high affinity for magic right from the moment they are born. While monsters naturally wield magic through the crystals embedded inside their physical bodies, humans must rely on the awakening ritual to manipulate the elements around them. Recalling Kane's explanation that compatible elements will naturally approach a worthy candidate, which makes Louis wonder if these magic crystals are actually the elements themselves. His blonde friend had clarified that literally everything in their world is made of elements, prompting our silver-haired hero to wonder if the water attribute is his perfect match. Slowly extending his finger, Louis gently taps the glowing blue orb of light, instantly triggering a vivid vision of beautiful mermaids swimming through the deep ocean, before a terrifying kraken with glowing red eyes suddenly emerges from the pitch-black abyss, leaving Louis completely frozen as a massive, monstrous presence looms directly behind him. Suddenly, Louis screams in agony as a terrifying surge of raw power floods his physical body, clutching his head while a massive pillar of chaotic elemental energy erupts violently around him, triggering a cosmic manifestation of the world's essence as ancient forces begin to collide, revealing a divine symbol of the goddess that pulses with pure, concentrated magical power. Our hero's eyes flash with a brilliant purple light, reflecting the chaotic elements swirling before him, while the academy principal watches the massive vortex in sheer panic, realizing things are getting dangerous. As Louis struggles to contain the overwhelming spiritual pressure threatening to tear the hall apart. Promptly, the principal unleashes a powerful goddess barrier to contain the wild, overflowing magical energy, calling upon the giant statue of goddess Gaia to seal the chaotic forces before they destroy everything. Finally, the wild energy subsides, leaving two glowing elemental circles shining brightly on the stone floor. This principal's massive barrier locks down the entire hall, trapping the chaotic elemental storm inside, while Louis screams in pure agony as the overwhelming magical pressure threatens to tear him apart, leaving the surrounding students completely blinded by the sudden violent shockwave of raw divine power. Watching from the sidelines, Kane Aranka desperately screams at Louis to keep his head in the game, prompting our silver-haired hero to grit his teeth and fight to regain control of his mind. As his glowing blue eyes flash with a sudden spark of absolute clarity and determination, suddenly the chaotic noise fades away as Louis finds himself standing alone in a quiet, starry void, wiping his brow after nearly frying his own brain cells on his very first try. But staring at the colorful floating orb, our boy notices something incredibly familiar about its structure. Realizing these magical elements are just basic particles he can manipulate with some simple science. Staring down at his hand, the protagonist watches a mysterious glowing orb begin to hum with power, as the sphere suddenly expands and starts swirling with a brilliant array of colorful lights, before detonating into a blinding flash of pure, concentrated elemental energy that fills the space. This protagonist stares in shock as the four basic elements of nature float right above his palm. While nearby, the academy principal struggles to maintain his massive barrier against the overflowing magical pressure, sweating slightly as he mutters a prayer to the goddess in absolute disbelief at this power, which continues to erupt into a colossal swirling vortex of rainbow-colored energy that shakes the entire hall, sending the surrounding students cowering in terror as they realize his aura completely eclipses Neil's awakening, prompting the principal to flash a confident smile, thrilled that our boy has exceeded his wildest expectations. Meanwhile, the protagonist realizes magic is just basic science, meaning humans can easily master it like monsters. Channeling the four basic elements directly through his fingertips, the protagonist prepares to test his theory, as he harmonizes the elemental particles with his breathing to smooth out his internal energy flow, aiming to condense a natural magic crystal right inside his own body like a monster, which would allow him to wield raw magic without relying on standard human incantations. Suddenly, his eyes snap open, with a brilliant glowing blue snowflake symbol pulsing in his iris, instantly triggering a violent eruption of sharp ice crystals that burst from the stone floor, encasing the entire training platform in a massive jagged fortress of solid frost, leaving Kane Aranka staring in absolute shock at the sheer scale of this sudden blizzard, before a colossal pillar of freezing energy detonates upward, shattering the air with pure cold, as a raging elemental storm sweeps through the hall to announce his terrifying new power. Watching the sudden blizzard unfold, the temple instructor realizes his petty sabotage has backfired spectacularly, while the protagonist floats effortlessly in the air, completely enveloped by a massive vortex of freezing energy, sending the terrified onlookers scrambling for their lives as jagged ice spikes rapidly overtake the hall. Unfortunately, a few slow-moving students get instantly flash-frozen into human popsicles before they can even scream, as the freezing frost rapidly spreads, threatening to turn the entire hall into a glacial wasteland. Realizing this runaway magic could expose his schemes, the panicked temple instructor decides he must intervene immediately, raising a sacred golden relic to chant a desperate prayer to the goddess for divine assistance. assistance, which instantly summons a massive pillar of blazing light to answer his call for elemental aid. Channeling the raw power of fire, the instructor unleashes a massive defensive spell to counter the cold, erecting a colossal flame barrier that clashes violently against the protagonist's overwhelming ice storm. Terrified students scramble for the exits as the massive elemental clash threatens to bring down the roof, while the corrupt instructor's desperate fire barrier slams directly into our boy's freezing blizzard, leaving the protagonist standing completely unfazed in the center of the chaotic magical storm, as a colossal pillar of raw energy erupts from the temple and pierces the sky. This insane display of power immediately alerts the principal in his study and onlookers outside, while even the training room instructors feel the sudden violent shift in the atmosphere. Meanwhile, Neil Gunn watches in absolute disbelief as our boy calmly steps forward, completely baffled by the bizarre freezing elemental energy radiating from the protagonist, who continues to channel his newly awakened power with absolute ease and confidence, closely analyzing the glowing elemental orb in his palm as the particles fuse together. Staring at the elemental chart, the protagonist realizes combining different elements could trigger a massive chemical reaction, while the blended wind and water elements completely flood his internal energy pathways, leaving our boy desperately needing to consult an expert before his body completely overloads. But as he snaps back to reality, he finds the academy principal standing right behind him, who casually snaps his fingers to dispel the massive magical storm raging inside the hall, instantly dissolving the giant golden barrier that kept the destructive elemental energy contained. Lowering his glowing academy relic, the blonde administrator looks completely exhausted from the effort, before glaring at the protagonist to ask if he actually comprehends the chaos he just caused, especially since half the student body is currently knocked out cold on the frozen floor, prompting our sheepish hero to scratch his head and offer a very awkward thank you. Leaving the frozen disaster behind, the principal orders his staff to handle the massive cleanup, before turning to Louis and inviting our silver-haired hero to his private office for a chat, as the two of them walk past the Takagata statue in the quiet hall, heading straight toward the exit while leaving the stunned onlookers whispering in their wake. Once inside his office, the principal straight up asks Louis if he actually mastered all 4 elements, prompting our confident hero to flash a smug grin and casually confirm the impossible truth, effortlessly summoning 4 glowing elemental orbs right above his palm to prove his point, which leaves the seasoned administrator completely speechless at the kid's terrifyingly natural talent, sliding over a rare handwritten magic journal to help Louis refine his chaotic power, while advising him to consult Faye and Miliana for advanced fire and water training. This principal suddenly calls out, summoning someone named Kylie to enter his private office, as a short-haired woman in a sharp uniform instantly teleports right before a surprised Louis, with the blonde principal introducing this newcomer as his most trusted personal aide, who will now be tasked with secretly guarding our silver-haired hero from any potential threats. Without wasting any time, Kylie suggests they immediately relocate to a much safer, more secure location, bringing Louis to a heavily reinforced training chamber buried deep beneath the academy grounds. Once inside, Kylie adjusts her glasses and asks Louis to demonstrate his mysterious new elemental power, which leads our hero to summon 2 distinct elemental orbs floating gently above his bandaged hand, explaining how he accidentally fused wind and water together by accelerating their internal particle speeds, instantly creating a blinding flash of freezing energy that he proudly calls the ice element. Hearing about this impossible fusion, the blonde principal stands completely stunned by the concept of mixed elements, while Kylie shivers from the sudden drop in temperature, instantly recognizing the terrifying nature of his magic. But instead of backing down, a creepy, excited grin slowly spreads across the aide's face. Suddenly, she lunges forward with insane speed, eager to test our silver-haired hero's combat capabilities firsthand, forcing Louis to unleash a rapid flurry of blocks to counter her relentless barrage of strikes. Though she deflects his initial counterattack, Kylie is visibly taken aback by the kid's raw physical strength, prompting Louis to narrow his eyes and channel even more freezing energy directly into his fists. As a sudden realization hits the aide, her eyes widening in shock at what is actually happening. Instantly, she leaps backward to create some distance, desperately trying to escape his freezing aura, only to realize her limbs have grown incredibly heavy as frost rapidly encases her arm. Watching Kylie summon her flames, the principal asks if fusing 2 elements has ever been done before answering his own question with a grim look, noting that humanity has studied magic endlessly. Yet despite centuries of research by history's greatest geniuses, not a single soul ever succeeded in fusing attributes. Most mages are strictly limited to controlling just one basic element for their entire lives, while only an elite handful ever managed to awaken multiple attributes at once, including the legendary Lady Miriam, a once-in-a-century genius who could barely command 3. But even she met a tragic end when she desperately tried to fuse her powers together, because her mind and physical body simply couldn't handle the sheer backlash of the combined energy. Hearing this, Louis asks if normal humans are simply too weak to survive attribute fusion, prompting the principal to explain that accelerating elements requires immense willpower to guide them safely. Kylie dramatically explains that guiding multiple elements at once would cause a violent internal collision, hilariously demonstrating how a normal human would instantly end up dead on the floor, before snapping back to her serious self to deliver her final, shocking conclusion. Realizing that Louis possesses a terrifying level of potential that could rival a legendary saint, ready to push him further, the aide unleashes a massive wave of blazing fire magic, charging straight at our silver-haired hero with her fists completely engulfed in raging flames, forcing Louis to quickly raise his ice-infused arms to block her relentless, fiery strikes. Watching the intense spar, the principal recalls an ancient theory about wielding multiple attributes, which suggests a mage must either possess a dragon's physical body to survive the elemental collision, or channel their magic through internal crystals just like the monsters do. Louis blocks another strike while asking about the final results of that forbidden research. This principal sighs in frustration, explaining that every single experiment failed miserably before being banned, admitting he never in his wildest dreams expected a student to actually shatter that taboo. Realizing his genius, Louis notes that circulating elements through separate pathways kept them from colliding, but Kylie immediately lunges with a fierce kick, warning him not to get too cocky, easily blocking the blow as he calmly confirms that he fully understands the massive stakes. If the wrong people find out, he will instantly become a target for every faction, which is exactly why keeping this absolute game-changer of a secret is a matter of survival, especially since his new bodyguard hates extra work and demands he keep a low profile. Nodding in agreement, Louis decides to claim he simply awakened a highly advanced form of water magic. Hearing Louis mention a new application of his magic, the principal looks on with deep confusion, while our silver-haired hero confidently asks Kylie to launch another high-speed attack to test his theory, prompting the fiery aide to immediately lunge forward with her fists completely engulfed in raging flames. But instead of dodging, Louis prepares to demonstrate how water behaves when subjected to extreme pressure, compressing the liquid particles in his palm until they condense into a blinding, highly pressurized orb, which instantly erupts into a massive shockwave that easily deflects Kylie's powerful fire strike, leaving the elite bodyguard completely speechless as she is blown backward by the sheer force. At that exact moment, the principal breaks into a cold sweat, instantly recognizing the terrifying anomaly, as Louis proudly reveals his brand new technique, calling this highly advanced state the superionic ice form, utterly dumbfounding the veteran administrator, who realizes this god-tier power completely transcends the boundaries of normal magic. Kylie stands completely baffled, wondering how on earth he turned ordinary water into heat-radiating ice, while Louis calmly explains that he simply applied intense pressure to compress the liquid particles, prompting the impressed principal to offer him personal guidance and academic credits for any future discoveries. Still, Kylie remains highly skeptical, questioning if they should really risk everything to protect this kid, but the blonde administrator refuses to dismiss the impossible, believing every great magic started as a coincidence, leaving the fiery aide to reluctantly accept her new duty while grumbling about her high-maintenance assignment, before she channels her blazing energy, fully committing to guarding our silver-haired hero with her life. And with a sudden burst of fire, she teleports away to leave the two of them alone. Handing over a glowing blue mental recovery potion, the principal advises Louis to rest up for tomorrow's classes, which leaves our hero staring at the vial, fascinated by the existence of magic designed to heal the mind. Walking back to his room, Louis feels completely energized thanks to the principal's high-grade potion, but as he opens the door, he stops dead in his tracks at an unexpected sight. Finding Kara sitting quietly in the dim room, apparently waiting up for his late-night return, our silver-haired hero asks if she was waiting for him, prompting a silent, subtle nod. He genuinely thanks her for saving his skin earlier by spotting that highly suspicious floor trap. Instead of replying, Kara silently reaches out and hands him a sleek black business card. Reading the Gandis Trading Company logo, Louis finally understands why her observation skills are so incredibly sharp. Gravely, he warns her that associating with him might paint a massive target on her back, only for her to offer a quiet word of thanks before heading out into the hallway, leaving Louis to realize this was just payback, though a merchant's connection could prove highly useful later. This next morning, Louis joins his classmates inside the massive Candria Arcanist Academy training hall, only to be greeted by a shirtless, hyper-muscular instructor named Derek, who immediately starts flexing, confidently promising the terrified freshmen that his brutal training will forge them into absolute masterpieces. While the rest of the class shivers in pure disgust at this bizarre display, our silver-haired hero calmly agrees that physical conditioning is indeed the true foundation of magic. Unfortunately, this quiet observation instantly catches the creepy instructor's attention as his eyes narrow, who teleports behind Louis with terrifying speed before anyone can even register his movement, whispering a deeply unsettling compliment directly into the startled kid's ear to express his approval. Before Louis can react, Derek aggressively wraps his massive arms around him to feel his muscles, leaving our poor hero completely traumatized as the eccentric teacher declares his love for hardworking students. Derek points out Kane's lack of muscle compared to the useless noble heirs, leaving the blonde noble completely offended. Shrugging it off, the muscle-bound teacher casually insults the elite families while Louis facepalms in the background. Derek announces that, following academy tradition, the upperclassmen will first demonstrate how to use the training gear. Suddenly, a group of arrogant seniors begins whispering about how incredibly weak and unreliable undeniable this year's freshman look, mocking the newcomers for apparently losing to commoners instead of maintaining their noble pride. Eager to show these fresh recruits the massive gap between mere apprentices and actual battle-hardened fighters. While Kane glares at the trash-talking seniors, Louis remains completely unfazed by their pathetic attempts at intimidation. Derek cuts the chatter short, ordering the upperclassmen to step up and show off their skills immediately, prompting a smug, brown-haired senior to confidently volunteer to lead the demonstration first, dramatically tossing his cape aside as he approaches a heavy machine designed to train the chest and arms. This smug senior grabs the handle, explaining that these training weights are heavily enhanced with earth magic, before casually pulling down a massive load that registers as a whopping 1 ton, leaving the gathered freshmen completely shell-shocked by this ridiculous display of raw physical power. Meanwhile, another senior spins inside a giant metal wheel at dizzying speeds without losing her balance, while a third upperclassman effortlessly sprints on a treadmill with heavy weights strapped to his legs. Promptly, Derek smugly tells the freshmen it is their turn, warning them not to get hurt, but the very first recruit immediately struggles to even budge the massive earth magic weights, while others end up completely dizzy and face down on the floor after trying the spinning wheel. And one poor kid gets violently launched off the high-speed treadmill, sliding across the room, prompting the arrogant seniors to mock the fallen rookies for being spoiled, weak little babies. Watching the training hall, the arrogant seniors suddenly freeze in absolute horror as they spot a literal monster, because Louis is casually sitting at the chest press, lifting a mind-boggling 10 tons like it's nothing, before hopping onto the high-speed treadmill and running so fast the entire machine begins to smoke. And when he tries the spinning wheel, he creates a literal tornado that threatens to blow everyone away. This ridiculous display leaves the trash-talking seniors completely speechless, their smug expressions instantly replaced by pure dread, prompting them to accuse Louis of using illegal drugs, only to notice another monster in the room. As Neil Gunn lets out a primal roar, his veins popping from determination to not be outdone, shattering the stone floor beneath his feet as he effortlessly pulls a massive 15-ton weight load, before sprinting on the treadmill while casually carrying 2 giant 10-ton blocks on his shoulders. Now, the terrified upperclassmen can only watch in absolute horror, realizing this year's freshmen are built entirely different. Dropping a massive 10-ton weight onto the floor, Neil Gunn confidently declares his victory over our hero, while demanding they ignore the rest of the class to finally settle who is truly superior. But Louis just sighs in pure exhaustion, reminding everyone that today is supposed to be basic physical training. He calmly points out that showing off raw strength to others is completely meaningless, which instantly triggers an arrogant senior who takes the calm remark as a direct personal insult, angrily demanding to know what kind of elemental attributes these cocky freshmen actually possess, prompting Neil to step forward and proudly reveal his dual attributes of fire and earth, leaving the upperclassmen completely shaken by the realization that a mere commoner possesses such rare talent. Turning to Louis, the senior asks for his element, only to receive a simple water demonstration, instantly sending the arrogant upperclassmen into a fit of hysterical, mocking laughter. This arrogant senior's point and laugh, mocking Louis for wasting his physical talent on a useless water attribute. Completely baffled by their laughter, our silver-haired hero genuinely wonders what makes water magic so hilariously bad, prompting Miliana to step forward and explain that water magic only has one basic offensive spell, making it a support-focused element that is constantly looked down upon by combat-oriented mages. Staring at his glowing water orb, Louis processes this hilarious piece of common knowledge with absolute disbelief, while the seniors smugly declare that no water mage has ever reached the rank of Grandmaster. As they continue to cackle, Louis calmly tells Miliana not to let their loud barking bother her, before turning back to ask if they truly believe a master rank is the absolute limit, which only earns him a smug thumbs down and a lecture about basic common sense from the seniors. This finally snaps Kane, who furiously yells at the idiots for acting like blind frogs in a well. Tempers flare as the furious freshmen and arrogant seniors trade heated insults across the training hall, before the smug, brown-haired senior steps forward to address their eccentric, muscle-bound instructor, explaining that true magical mastery requires enduring physical attacks to build absolute body toughness. He proposes a brutal sparring match to demonstrate exactly how useless the water attribute really is, flashing a wicked grin as he promises to personally teach our silver-haired hero a painful lesson. Leaning in, Kane quietly warns Louis that this arrogant jerk is actually Sheath's older brother, but Louis simply steps forward, calmly declaring that no elemental attribute is inherently superior to another, confidently accepting the challenge to prove his point by taking on the seniors in battle. This bold declaration only makes the upperclassmen sneer, eager to humiliate the cocky rookie. While Kane watches with deep concern, our hero casually waves it off with a confident smile. Derek crosses his arms, announcing that magic is only allowed in the central training area, and warns the students that dodging any incoming attacks is strictly against the rules, prompting Neil Gunn to burst into a maniacal laugh as his fiery aura erupts. Thrilled that he can finally settle the score with our hero fair and square, as he aggressively challenges the entire room, completely consumed by his hot-headed competitive spirit. But Sheath's older brother merely scoffs, planning to crush Louis before dealing with Neil. This arrogant senior begins channeling his earth magic, a bright golden light wrapping around his arm, which suddenly explodes into a blinding flash that illuminates the entire training hall. while Louis watches the flashy display with his usual calm, completely unimpressed expression, revealing the senior fully encased in a massive, glowing suit of solid stone armor. This stone-armored senior leaps forward, aiming a heavy fist directly at Louis while shouting insults. But before his attack can land, Neil Gunn's flaming fist violently intercepts him mid-air, sending the arrogant senior crashing face-first into the dirt in a spectacular explosion of dust. This sudden, brutal intervention leaves Sheath's older brother and the other seniors completely speechless, while Neil stands proudly with his fist still ablaze, calling his opponent a total weakling. Trembling in disbelief, the defeated senior clutches his face as his supposedly unbreakable armor shatters, prompting the furious leader to order his remaining lackeys to swarm the red-haired hothead together. And without hesitation, two upperclassmen launch a coordinated aerial assault directly at Neil. Instead of dodging, the battle-crazy commoner rips off his shirt and laughs like a complete maniac, eagerly taking their barrage of strikes head-on to prove his absolute physical dominance. Neil Gunn lets out a maniacal grin, completely unfazed by the barrage of incoming attacks, before casually catching a senior's flying kick with a single rock-solid grip, effortlessly swinging the arrogant upperclassman around like a rag doll before slamming him down, sending the rest of the attacking squad tumbling across the training hall floor. Seizing the moment, Sheath's older brother lunges from behind with a massive stone fist strike, landing a direct hit that somehow fails to even budge the red-haired monster, leaving the arrogant senior sweating bullets as he desperately hopes his attack did something, only for his supposedly unbreakable stone armor to start violently cracking from the impact. Realizing too late that punching Neil is basically like punching a solid mountain, as his stone-clad arm completely shatters, sending him screaming in absolute agony. Neil Gunn casually shrugs off the attack, joking that he thought a mere mosquito had landed on his back. This defeated senior trembles in absolute shock, realizing Neil concentrated his magic to defend a single spot. Before the senior can even process this insane level of control, Neil launches a devastating fire punch, sending the arrogant upperclassman flying across the room and crashing violently into the training hall wall, leaving the poor guy completely embedded in the stone while Derek uses him as a hilarious teaching lesson. This battered senior groans in agony, serving as a grim warning of what happens to arrogant show-offs. Watching the brutal display from the sidelines, Lewis sweat drops and wonders if that was a bit too extreme, but the remaining seniors refuse to back down, launching a coordinated elemental assault from both sides, prompting Kane to step in to block the Wind Mage while a fiery senior challenges Neil's flame, setting the stage for an absolute chaotic elemental clash as spells begin flying across the training hall. Flashing a smug grin, Sheath's older brother prepares to step up for his turn. He confidently challenges Louis to a final match to settle their dispute once and for all. Glaring intensely, the arrogant noble promises to teach our silver-haired hero some proper manners. Suddenly, he launches himself into the air, shattering the stone floor with a burst of wind. Diving straight down like a hawk, he aims a high-speed strike directly at Louis. Unleashing his signature spell, Gale Penetrate, a massive spiral of green wind erupts from his hands. But instead of dodging, our hero stands his ground and blocks the devastating aerial blast, leaving the arrogant senior completely dumbfounded as his ultimate attack is effortlessly stopped, only to realize Louis has conjured a solid ice shield to neutralize the wind pressure, proving that his supposedly weak water magic is actually on a completely different level. Sheath's older brother stares in absolute shock, his mind completely failing to process what just happened, as he gets violently blown backward by the sheer rebounding force of his own deflected wind attack, clutching a stray shard of ice while trembling at the ridiculous power of this supposed support element. While Louis calmly explains that freezing things is really just a basic, logical upgrade to water magic. Nearby, Faye steps up and effortlessly blocks another senior's strike with her own defensive barrier, turning back to look at our silver-haired hero with a mixture of relief and deep awe. This display of power leaves the remaining upperclassmen clenching their fists in pure, frustrated disbelief, prompting Sheath's older brother to narrow his eyes as he plots a much dirtier comeback. But before he can act, Neil Gunn violently launches another senior into the air with a brutal strike. Still, the arrogant noble simply smirks, confident that he still holds the ultimate winning hand. Neil Gunn continues his rampage, sending another arrogant senior flying with a brutal punch, before turning his fiery gaze toward his next opponent with a maniacal grin. He lunges forward to strike, but Sheath's older brother agilely dodges the flaming fist, leaving the battle-crazy commoner momentarily stunned by his opponent's unexpected dodging speed, as a series of massive elemental explosions suddenly rock the entire training hall. Undeterred, Neil Gunn charges again while Sheath's older brother leaps high into the air, unleashing a powerful gust of green wind magic to keep the red-haired monster at bay. Frustrated by the constant dodging, Neil Gunn roars from above, demanding a fair fight, suddenly slamming down with a devastating fire strike that shatters the stone floor, while Sheath's older brother seizes the chaos to launch a swift aerial kick at Lewis. Lewis easily blocks the surprise attack, calling out the noble for his complete lack of honor. But the arrogant senior just smirks, claiming that dirty tactics are just smart decisions to win, before Neil Gunn charges back into the fray, completely annoyed by all the constant running around, and he unleashes a massive fiery fist that sends Sheath's older brother flying backward, though the noble manages to land on his feet, complaining about facing a 2-on-1 fight, only to suddenly flash a sinister grin as he channels his wind magic for another strike. Diving straight down like a green hurricane, he aims his ultimate attack directly at our silver-haired hero. But Neil Gunn violently intercepts him mid-air, screaming at the senior to stop interfering in his fight, leaving the battered noble spitting blood and completely baffled by the red-haired commoner's absolute lack of teamwork as he gets blasted away for good, leaving Neil to finally face Louis in a proper duel. Neil Gunn wastes no time and unleashes a rapid barrage of fiery punches at our silver-haired hero, while Louis watches from the sidelines with a confident smile, thoroughly impressed by the commoner's raw talent. But the protagonist keeps his cool, his glowing blue eyes instantly tracking every single incoming strike, allowing him to easily slide back and block the heavy blows while pinpointing his opponent's fatal opening, before delivering a sharp counterpunch straight to Neil's gut that leaves the red-haired beast gasping for air. Suddenly, Faye screams a frantic warning from the crowd, sensing that the danger is far from over, and before our hero can react, Neil Gunn tightly grabs his wrist with a bloody, stubborn grip, flashing a terrifying maniacal grin as his fiery aura flares up with absolute unhinged intensity. And he lands a devastating close-range fire punch that sends the protagonist reeling with a bloody nose, roaring in absolute triumph as he declares that their real battle is only just getting started. Wiping blood from his nose, the protagonist coldly reminds his opponent about the Academy's strict safety rules, before unleashing a massive surge of icy mana that tightly locks Neil Gunn in place, which only makes the battle-crazy commoner laugh maniacally as the freezing pressure begins to build, eagerly welcoming the challenge while refusing to run or hide from our hero's counterattack. But as Neil Gunn lunges forward with a fiery strike, the protagonist easily blocks it with solid ice, asking his stubborn opponent if he would prefer to experience something a little more extreme, as sharp, jagged glaciers suddenly erupt from the ground, completely encasing Neil's body in solid ice. Yet the red-haired beast simply grins through the frost, absolutely loving the agonizing sensation of pain. Suddenly, a massive pillar of intense fire erupts to melt the ice and engulf the entire platform, prompting Neil Gunn to break free and launch another devastating, flame-infused punch directly at the protagonist. Neil Gunn grins maniacally, declaring that fighting our hero is the ultimate way to grow stronger, taking us back to his brutal childhood, where a young Neil struggled to survive in the wild, constantly hunted by packs of vicious wolves that stalked him through the dark forest, forcing the young boy to stay alert even while desperately trying to get a drink, as the hungry beasts suddenly lunged out of the shadows to tear him apart. Instead of running, he blocked their razor-sharp fangs with his bare arms and legs, enduring the agonizing pain of teeth sinking deep into his flesh without shedding a single tear, before using his raw strength to pry the beast's jaws wide open with his bare hands, letting out a feral roar as his dormant beast-like instincts completely took over his mind, realizing that pain was nothing more than the ultimate proof that he was still alive. Standing proud with a bloody chest, Neil Gunn lets out a wild, unhinged grin, as he proudly declares that every single scar and ounce of pain only makes him stronger, believing that the only people who truly deserve to survive in this brutal world are the absolute strongest, just like the beasts he slaughtered during his harsh childhood. Back in the present, the battle-crazy commoner locks his glowing red eye onto his target, screaming at the top of his lungs for his opponent to unleash even more pain. Suddenly, Neil stomps his foot down hard, shattering the stone floor beneath him, before launching himself high into the air to target Louis Kirill directly, diving down like a blazing meteor while calling them both power-hungry monsters. But Louis calmly prepares his defense, conjuring multiple spectral hands to intercept the incoming strike. Meeting the blazing fist head-on, the protagonist firmly blocks the explosive strike with his bare hands, deflecting the massive wave of fire and sending a violent shockwave ripping across the training ground, which only fuels Neil Gunn's unhinged excitement as his eyes glow with pure battle madness. Seizing a split-second opening, the protagonist leaps high and delivers a brutal kick to Neil's face, but the red-haired beast just grins through the blood, completely unfazed by the heavy impact, trading devastating blows as they engage in a relentless high-speed brawl that shakes the entire arena. On the sidelines, Faye and Louis realize they might actually have to step in soon. Yet Neil Gunn is far from finished, charging forward with another wild wind-up punch, prompting the protagonist to quickly brainstorm a way to neutralize him without breaking Academy rules, before unleashing a freezing palm strike to finally cool the battle-crazy commoner down. This protagonist unleashes a massive ice tempest spell, freezing the entire training platform in an instant. Neil Gunn finds himself pinned to the frozen wall, laughing maniacally despite the agonizing cold. But his burning passion instantly flares up, melting the ice with sheer, unadulterated willpower, as his muscles bulge and intense flames wrap around his limbs for another explosive charge, leaving the onlookers absolutely thrilled by the sheer insanity of this relentless back and forth, while Neil crouches in the flames, roaring that a simple freeze is nowhere near enough to stop him, flashing a terrifying grin as his eyes glow with an absolute unhinged thirst for battle. But before he can launch his next strike, a sudden devastating force crashes down from above, leaving the protagonist completely stunned as he recognizes the powerful newcomer who just intervened, as Teacher Kylie stands over the face-planted commoner, coldly declaring that the sparring match has officially ended. Adjusting her glasses, Kylie immediately calls out the temple instructor for being a complete muscle-brained idiot. Instead of taking offense, the shirtless temple instructor immediately swoons, praising her beauty with a goofy grin. But Kylie instantly slaps his hand away, warning the shameless pervert to keep his distance. Defending his actions, the temple instructor claims he was only trying to draw out the student's potential. Unimpressed, Kylie gives him a cold glare, reminding him of her strict orders to protect Louis. Flaunting her fiery aura, she delivers the principal's direct command for him to report to the office. This temple instructor simply sighs, realizing he is in for yet another long and tedious lecture. But as he looks back at the arena, his expression softens into one of genuine curiosity. Watching Louis, Faye, and their classmates celebrate, he wonders just how powerful these freshmen will eventually become, before warning a dizzy Neil Gunn to put some clothes on or risk losing his credits. Neil Gunn clutches his head in frustration, realizing his battle-crazy lifestyle is quickly bankrupting his wardrobe budget. Meanwhile, the shirtless temple instructor finally rings the bell, dismissing the class after a chaotic training session. Louis immediately throws an arm around the protagonist, grinning as he brings up the Academy's legendary history. Our silver-haired hero listens quietly, scratching his cheek while trying to recall any records of such feats, only for Louis to excitedly reveal that freshmen defeating seniors has actually happened 3 times before, pointing out that the most recent legendary group happened to be none other than their own fathers. Nearby, the bruised and battered seniors tremble in absolute humiliation, whispering about taking care of them secretly. But Sheath's older brother tells them to stay calm, plotting a much more calculated revenge later, declaring that no matter how talented these freshmen are, the nobles still control their ultimate fate. While the protagonist stands in the shadows, his cold gaze proving he is ready for whatever comes next. Faye asks Louis what he thought of the protagonist's incredible water magic technique, but Louis admits he can't copy those mysterious moves, staring at the silver-haired hero's memory, staring down at his hands while realizing he desperately needs to expand his own elemental arsenal. Though Faye quickly pats his shoulder, reminding him that he is still only 16 years old, prompting the blue-haired boy to clench his fist and vow to do his absolute best. Until Faye suddenly shouts his name, announcing that Miliana has something important to discuss, sending the surrounding crowd into a frenzy of gossip about a potential romantic confession. Instead, Faye asks the approaching protagonist if he can teach his advanced water magic to Miliana, and our silver-haired hero readily agrees with a warm smile, calling them all close friends, leaving Louis staring down in silence as the weight of that word echoes in his mind. Miliana anxiously clasps her hands, warning our silver-haired hero that associating with her will only bring him trouble. This protagonist just flashes a reassuring smile, declaring he would never dream of turning his back on a friend. Still, the blue-haired girl keeps her face shadowed in guilt, desperately wishing to keep him out of her mess, before she suddenly turns on her heel and bolts out of the arena in a fit of overwhelming emotion, prompting Faye to quickly chase after her while shouting a hasty apology back to the confused group. Left behind, our hero quietly reflects on his own secrets, wondering if he is actually the real danger here, until he turns to Kane Aranka, asking if the blonde noble has any inside scoop on Miliana's mysterious background. Kane explains that she is the sole heir of the Royce family, once led by a legendary Grand Master Mage. But their immense influence completely vanished after the matriarch's passing, leaving the family powerless and vulnerable in high society. So the protagonist immediately turns to Kara, hoping her deep connections might yield some much-needed answers. Kara explains that Miliana's family had a massive conflict with the powerful Arcanist Association, prompting the protagonist to ask if she knows any other details about this dangerous situation. But since Kara is out of leads, our hero realizes he must ask Miliana directly. Meanwhile, the freshmen gather at the training field as their new instructor demands absolute silence, introducing himself as Teacher Sid while giving the protagonist an incredibly cold and suspicious glare, which immediately makes Louis complain to Kane Aranka about the new teacher's obvious hostility toward him, only for Teacher Sid to instantly catch them whispering and snap at their lack of discipline, ruthlessly docking a credit from both Louis and Kane before they can even defend themselves, looming over Louis with an oppressive aura to promise that continuous rule breakers will end up bankrupt, leaving the duo completely stunned as the petty instructor walks away after tossing one last insult. Teacher Sid snaps his fingers, summoning a bright golden aura to show off his magical prowess, as a colossal stone knight armed with a spear and shield rises directly behind him, leaving Kane and our silver-haired hero completely stunned by the sheer scale of his earth magic. But the smug instructor simply ignites a flame his finger to explain martial arcane combat, demonstrating how a true apprentice must manifest their raw magic power into a physical weapon before conjuring a massive glowing energy sword that hovers menacingly above his head. With a swift, effortless swing, Teacher Sid channels his power to unleash a devastating energy slash, which tears through the air and cleanly slices his own giant stone creation in half, prompting the entire class of freshmen to stare in absolute disbelief at the ridiculous display of power. While the sliced statue crumbles and Sid promises 5 credits to whoever can replicate the damage, Teacher Sid snaps his fingers, ordering the class to split into groups based on their elemental attributes, while Louis waves a cheerful goodbye as the students head off to their respective training zones, prompting a couple of smug nobles to immediately start mocking the water attribute mages as glorified punching bags. Hearing the insults, Miliana looks downcast, complaining to the protagonist that water mages are always stuck playing support, as she remembers a painful childhood memory of a mysterious man walking away from her, leaving our silver-haired hero to wonder if this mysterious person is connected to the Arcanist Association. But Miliana quickly shakes her head, claiming her personal family drama has nothing to do with him. Trying to ease her mind, the protagonist asks why she is so obsessed with offensive spells anyway, and she fiercely replies that she must master both attack and defense to restore her fallen family, which makes our hero realize she truly believes water magic holds a hidden, devastating offensive power. Miliana stares at her weak water blade, lamenting that her element lacks the raw power to ever reach greatness, until a smug classmate approaches, cracking his knuckles and demanding she cast a shield to warm him up, prompting the blue-haired girl to silently summon a swirling barrier of water to prepare for his incoming strike, which the arrogant student immediately leaps at, testing her defensive magic with a swift and aggressive aerial assault. Watching her struggle, our silver-haired hero feels a deep empathy, seeing his own tragic past life reflected in her eyes. Back then, he was confined to a wheelchair, mocked by cruel bullies for even dreaming of researching martial arts, who violently shoved him to the floor to steal his research, claiming a weakling deserved no glory, leaving him surrounded by shadowy tormentors who sneered at his impossible dreams and told him to just die. Now, our silver-haired hero smiles warmly, deeply admiring Miliana's absolute refusal to abandon her own ambitions, deciding that he might just step in and show this determined girl a brand new path of martial arts. Stepping in to protect Miliana, the protagonist channels a sudden burst of freezing energy, summoning a massive jagged ice wall that completely shuts down the arrogant senior's aerial assault, before turning to the stunned blue-haired girl to ask if she wants to see his real technique. Raising his hand, our silver-haired hero boldly asks teacher Sid for a shot at the stone giant, but the petty instructor immediately threatens to confiscate his credits if he fails to damage it. Undeterred, the protagonist confidently promises to only use water magic to shatter the reinforced target, prompting their smug classmates to burst into hysterical laughter at his seemingly suicidal declaration, while Miliana anxiously warns him that the magic-reinforced ore is far too durable for basic water spells. With a reassuring pat on her shoulder, our hero simply smiles and tells her to trust him. Under the watchful eyes of the class, he calmly steps forward to face the colossal stone knight. Kneeling down, the protagonist grabs a handful of loose sand while recalling an ancient saying from his past life, that even the softest element can easily pierce the hardest defense when channeled with absolute precision. As he concentrates his mana, shooting a highly pressurized stream of water straight from his fingertips, transforming the gentle liquid into a razor-sharp blade capable of slicing through literally anything, which swirls around him in a blinding vortex of pure, concentrated kinetic energy, before he unleashes his devastating martial arcane aqua cutter technique with a single effortless swipe. This watching nobles immediately scoff, convinced his seemingly weak attack didn't even leave a single scratch, only to freeze in horror as glowing blue fracture lines suddenly spiderweb across the massive target, leaving teacher Sid completely speechless as his sweat-drenched face turns pale with sheer disbelief, before the colossal stone knight is cleanly sliced into a dozen pieces and crumbles to the ground. Standing amid swirling water currents, our silver-haired hero smugly reflects on the true power of water magic. Later that night, the trio strolls through the academy courtyard while discussing their chaotic training session, with Louis excitedly laughing about how priceless teacher Sid's pale face was after losing those credits, explaining that the arrogant instructor looked like he ate rotten bread before running away in shame, though our hero admits he was too focused on his spell to notice the teacher's misery. Shifting gears, Louis mentions that Faye is desperately trying to find a new path for Miliana, even planning to rent out expensive training rooms and buy high-grade mental recovery potions for her, until Kara casually drops the astronomical prices, leaving both boys sweating in absolute financial horror, prompting our silver-haired hero to quickly turn to her and ask for a massive personal favor, plotting his next move as the upcoming training mission looms over the quiet academy grounds. Standing before the freshmen, the shirtless temple instructor announces their upcoming mandatory academy training missions. He explains that the academy borders the massive Mondo Forest, a dangerous territory teeming with monsters, where the beasts grow exponentially stronger the deeper one ventures into the dark woods, meaning the outer edges are relatively safe for rookies to test their combat skills, as students are regularly sent out to cull these beasts and protect the Empire, allowing them to harvest valuable magic crystals that can be traded for precious academy credits, but getting rescued by a teacher after biting off more than they can chew cost credits. Hearing this, Neil Gunn cracks his knuckles with a wild grin, eager to finally go all out, while our silver-haired hero explains to Faye that real combat is the best way to train Miliana, proposing they form a 5-person team to maximize their growth without wasting money on rental rooms. Faye asks Miliana what she thinks of the team-up, and the blue-haired girl eagerly nods in agreement. This temple instructor claps his hands together, signaling that it is time to officially begin the training. He announces that the freshmen will be paired up with the seniors for this dangerous forest mission. A smug senior immediately approaches our silver-haired hero, warning him not to lose his life out there. But our protagonist just flashes a confident smirk, noting that danger is the best way to grow, leaving the senior completely annoyed by his attitude, muttering about what a cheeky brat our hero is. This older students quietly agree to leave the freshmen to rot if they get into any trouble. Kane whispers a warning that the seniors might deliberately lure them toward high-level monsters to get them killed, which only makes our hero smile, for thrilled by the prospect of harvesting much more valuable magic crystals. And with their teams finalized, the students march straight into the dark depths of the massive forest. As the group marches deeper, the smug senior confidently explains that only low-level fighter-class monsters remain here, secretly mocking the freshmen for thinking they can actually survive a real fight with their basic skills, until a massive razor-sharp claw suddenly crashes down and shatters the earth right in front of them, instantly wiping the arrogant smirk off the senior's face as he freezes in absolute terror, because a colossal grand bear with glowing red eyes is now towering directly over him. Showing his true colors, the cowardly guide immediately scrambles up a tree to watch them struggle, hoping this high defense beast will completely crush our silver-haired hero and his friends. But the freshmen don't even blink, calmly drawing their weapons to form a perfect battle formation, while the giant beast unleashes a deafening roar that shakes the very trees around them, prompting Faye to boldly lead the charge, her spear blazing with fire as she leaps into action. Faye's fiery spear strike collides with the giant beast, creating a massive explosion of sparks, while Louis spins gracefully through the air, channeling sharp wind magic around his dual blades, landing a rapid flurry of green slashes directly across the monster's thick armored back. But Louis quickly panics as the giant bear shrugs off the damage with absolute ease. With a deafening roar, the furious beast slams its massive paw down, nearly crushing him, only for a sudden explosive blast of fire to strike the monster right in the face, courtesy of Kara's perfectly aimed arrow, earning a quick nod of approval from our silver-haired hero. Unfortunately, the attack only angers the colossal beast further as it prepares to charge again, prompting Miliana to boldly step forward, swinging her staff to summon a massive torrent of water, which wraps tightly around the bear's heavy arm to completely lock its deadly movements. Miliana's water binding constricts the roaring grand bear, trapping its massive body in a swirling blue vortex. Screaming with absolute determination, the blue-haired girl prepares to unleash her secret martial arcane technique. With a massive heave, she executes a devastating water flow shoulder throw that launches the beast skyward, sending the colossal bear spinning helplessly through the air like a giant, furry ragdoll, leaving our silver-haired hero completely dumbfounded as Faye explains this move combines water magic with jujutsu, prompting the protagonist to smirk with genuine intrigue at Miliana's brilliant display of tactical genius, before he suddenly bursts forward, kicking up dust as he charges straight toward the disoriented monster, while the furious grand bear roars in anger as it desperately tries to regain its footing. Refusing to let his teammates outshine him, our hero leaps high into the air with absolute confidence, channeling his immense power to deliver a devastating blow that will finish this beast once and for all. As the giant bear spins helplessly through the Kaskai from Miliana's massive throw, our silver-haired hero channels a highly concentrated sphere of water and heat magic, aiming his volatile spell directly at the airborne beast before it can recover, and with a sudden burst of speed, he launches the pressurized projectile upward, triggering a massive explosion of superheated steam that completely engulfs the colossal monster. This boiling vapor penetrates the bear's tough armor, burning its throat and lungs from within, before the defeated beast crashes back to Earth, leaving a massive crater in the dirt. Staring at the steaming carcass, Miliana and the others are left completely speechless by the display, while our hero smugly explains how combining water with heat bypasses even the toughest external defenses, inspiring the blue-haired girl to wonder if she can master this devastating internal damage technique too. Tossing a shiny metallic object to the stunned blue-haired girl, our silver-haired hero casually breaks the post-battle silence, leaving Miliana staring down at the mysterious trinket in her palm with utter confusion. Our boy proudly displays his own rings, explaining he had Kara source them to bypass their elemental limitations. Deeply touched by his thoughtfulness, Miliana slips the magical ring onto her finger with a soft thank you. But the moment she channels her mana, a colossal pillar of roaring fire erupts toward the sky, shocking the entire group as the sheer intensity of the flames completely catches her off guard, while she desperately tries to control the wild, blazing inferno swirling violently around her body, unleashing a devastating line of pure destruction that cleanly incinerates a massive path through the dense forest. Staring down at her trembling fist, the young water mage can barely process the sheer scale of destruction as she realizes that this cheap-looking ring just granted her the explosive power of a high-tier fire mage. This cowardly senior trembles on his branch, utterly terrified that a fighter-class beast was just obliterated. But before anyone can celebrate, our silver-haired hero senses a massive threat rapidly approaching, prompting the cowardly guide to look up and completely lose his mind in sheer panic, as a pack of terrifying fire-shrouded blaze kongs comes crashing through the burning trees, with the lead monster beating its chest and unleashing a roar that shakes the forest floor, leaving Louis and the others crouching in the bushes, desperately trying to assess the danger. Since these high-tier monsters are supposed to be locked deep inside the forbidden zones, and seeing them casually tear apart the massive bear carcass only confirms their worst nightmares. Realizing Realizing the scale of the threat, Kane warns that the other student groups might be targeted too. While nearby, a helpless squad of seniors finds themselves cornered by a towering fiery beast. A panicked senior cradles his unconscious classmate, completely baffled by the sudden monster invasion. But Neil Gunn just stands his ground against a massive fire-shrouded Blaze Kong, cracking his knuckles with a wild grin as he welcomes the challenge. Nearby, terrified students fire a green distress flare before running for their lives, while our silver-haired hero realizes these high-tier beasts shouldn't even be in this zone. And right on cue, another fiery ape corners a helpless blonde senior from behind. Desperate to survive, the older student quickly activates his defensive soil armor spell, only for the monster to instantly shatter his defenses with a single brutal smash, leaving the arrogant senior twitching in a crater of his own broken pride. As the massive beast raises its heavy foot to finish him off for good, bleeding and utterly terrified, the arrogant senior screams as the massive beast prepares to crush him. But our silver-haired protagonist suddenly drops from the sky, slamming a water-infused strike into the monster's face, sending the colossal Blaze Kong sliding backward across the dirt in a massive spray of water. Landing gracefully, our hero immediately shouts for Kara and Miliana to grab the injured senior and retreat, prompting Kara to hoist the bleeding upperclassman onto her back while the others prepare to hold the line. Unfortunately, the furious beast quickly recovers, gathering a massive sphere of volatile fire magic inside its maw, leaving our hero, Lewis and Faye, to scream in panic as they realize what is coming next. A devastating beam of pure heat erupts from the monster, forcing the team to scatter in all directions, while Kara and Miliana sprint through the forest to carry the unconscious senior away from the blast zone. Bracing for a brutal fight, Louis and Faye agree that teamwork is their only shot at surviving. Louis activates his wind acceleration magic, dodging the beast's devastating fire beam with split-second timing, and with his dual blades glowing green, the blonde swordsman charges straight into the danger zone, prompting the furious Blaze Kong to swing a massive heavy fist to crush him instantly. But Louis effortlessly slips past the attack, executing a precise wind stab that pierces the monster's shoulder, before Faye suddenly leaps from behind, landing a devastating fiery slash across the giant ape's back, refusing to give the beast a single moment to recover as she spins her blazing weapon, slamming a massive pillar of pure fire directly down onto the screaming monster's head. Watching her wild display, Louis just smirks confidently, teasingly calling his fiery ally a complete musclehead, which only fires Faye up even more as she channels her devastating Icrid Lance technique mid-air, unleashing a massive Cremont fall that completely buries the giant beast in a swirling vortex of destruction. Faye spots the glowing magic core inside the beast, realizing this is their golden opportunity. And without wasting a single second, she channels her ultimate Sacred Lance technique, plunging her blazing weapon straight down to pierce the giant monster's vital spot. This resulting impact triggers a colossal explosion of fire that completely incinerates the battlefield, shattering the beast's core into glowing fragments and sealing their hard-fought victory, allowing Faye to strike a victorious pose over the smoking carcass of her prey. But before she can even celebrate, a sudden warning shout echoes through the dark woods, as another massive Blaze Kong ambushes her from above, unleashing a deadly stream of fire, prompting our silver-haired protagonist to leap forward, conjuring a massive ice shield to protect her, bracing himself as the searing flames crash violently against his absolute crystalline defense. This protagonist's massive ice barrier surges forward, absorbing the brunt of the beast's fiery breath, completely encasing the colossal Blaze Kong in a massive solid block of crystalline ice, prompting Faye to let out a sigh of relief as she gratefully thanks our silver-haired hero. But their relief is short-lived when the frozen monster's eyes glow red as it charges another blast, forcing our hero to grab Faye and leap backward, just as a devastating laser shatters the glacier, allowing the roaring beast to break completely free while scattering frozen shards in every direction. And to make matters worse, its deep battle wounds begin to rapidly close and regenerate. Louis and Faye watch in absolute horror, realizing these high-tier monsters possess insane self-healing capabilities, while our silver-haired protagonist narrows his eyes as a chillingly familiar sensation washes over him, realizing this beast's chaotic energy feels exactly like Neil Gunn's berserk firepower from before. Neil Gunn laughs maniacally, completely unfazed by the chaos as blood drips down his face, before he casually delivers a brutal punch straight into a roaring monster's face. But his celebration is cut short when three more fiery apes dive-bomb him from above. Meanwhile, their flat-topped instructor, Sid, watches the spreading forest fire, sweating over the student's safety, while our silver-haired protagonist, Faye and Louis, brace themselves against a towering threat, sweating profusely as our hero realizes they might have finally bitten off more than they can chew, especially since 5 massive fire-shrouded beasts have completely surrounded their small group in the dark woods. Elsewhere in the clearing, William Aranka lies flat on his back, pretending to be completely defeated, staring blankly at the sky to make his fake knockout look as convincing as possible, until he flashes a devious smirk, ready to use these defective monsters for his own twisted plans. William Aranka smirks behind his hand, activating a glowing green ring to execute his devious plan. While deep in the forest, 3 massive Blaze Kongs corner Neil Gunn with deafening roars, as the lead beast channels a terrifying surge of wild, explosive fire magic, leaving Louis and the protagonist completely horrified to see wild monsters utilizing advanced arcane armor. before a colossal fist slams down, shattering the earth and forcing the team to scatter, prompting our silver-haired protagonist to slide backward across the dirt to regain his footing. Meanwhile, Neil Gunn just chuckles at the three towering apes surrounding him, completely unfazed. But one of the beasts responds by conjuring a massive sun-like sphere of concentrated heat, raising the volatile fireball high into the air to unleash a devastating wave of pure destruction, which leaves our protagonist sweating in sheer disbelief at the overwhelming power of these mutated monsters. Surrounded by five mutated apes, our blonde swordsman stands completely trapped under a dome of concentrated heat, prompting Faye to scream his name in absolute terror as she desperately reaches out to save him. But the massive fireballs detonate simultaneously, swallowing the entire clearing in a blinding apocalyptic explosion. Watching the distant inferno from a safe distance, William Aranka stands tall with a smug expression, quietly celebrating the success of his devious plan to eliminate the troublesome competition once and for all. While elsewhere, Teacher Sid casually holds a massive beast by its jaws, completely distracted by the blast. Even the battle-crazed Neil Gunn pauses his rampage, looking back in confusion at the sudden, massive shockwave, only for a brilliant pillar of blue light to suddenly pierce straight through the raging fire, leaving the mutated apes trembling in absolute terror as a freezing chill rapidly sweeps across the battlefield. As our silver-haired protagonist unleashes a colossal water vortex that completely reshapes the burning forest, Faye and Louis stare up in absolute disbelief, their weapons lowered in sheer shock. As our silver-haired protagonist floats in the center of a massive swirling vortex of pure mana, his eyes glowing with a chilling blue light that radiates absolute dominance over the battlefield, leaving the stunned onlookers to realize the kid has been hiding master-level strength this entire time. Though forcing his mana to circulate this fast is putting a massive strain on his body. Realizing he has to end this instantly, a glowing snowflake pattern ignites within his pupil, prompting our hero to unleash his ultimate ice-breathing technique with a deafening battle cry, sending a colossal torrent of freezing water surging forward to swallow the mutated apes whole, which instantly solidifies into sharp, jagged glaciers that trap the roaring monsters mid-strike, completely freezing the entire battlefield in a breathtaking display of absolute sub-zero destruction. Sliding across the frozen battlefield, our silver-haired protagonist conjures ice skates to maintain his momentum, before diving headfirst into the fray with a swirling vortex of water magic shielding his body, leaving the lead monster completely wide-eyed as it realizes its fiery advantage has evaporated, as our hero delivers a devastating water-infused strike that shatters the beast's chest armor, sending the giant ape crashing down while the remaining monsters watch their comrade fall. But our boy isn't done yet, channeling his freezing mana directly into his bandaged fist, just as another mutated ape lunges from above with a massive, fire-shrouded fist, prompting the kid to summon a jagged glacier that instantly intercepts the heavy blow, completely freezing the monster's arm, solid before the chill can even register. Though two more fiery beasts quickly close in to crush his defensive water barrier, our silver-haired protagonist fires relentless beams of water magic, keeping the remaining mutated apes completely on the defensive, leaving the confused beasts looking around in panic as ice spikes suddenly erupt all around them, while our boy blitzes through the battlefield like a blue streak of pure, unadulterated mana, activating a massive 8 trigrams magic circle right beneath the feet of his giant targets. Before they can even react, the freezing spell locks the towering monsters inside solid blocks of ice, creating a brief, tense silence as the battlefield freezes over under his absolute control. But the kid immediately follows up by unleashing a devastating chain palm strike with both hands, sending a massive shockwave of freezing energy straight through the newly formed glaciers, allowing our hero to slide gracefully across the frozen ground to stick a perfect landing, as the towering mutated apes remain completely frozen solid in a massive, breathtaking display of sub-zero power. This massive blaze Kongs scream in absolute agony as the freezing ice completely locks them down, leaving our silver-haired protagonist to stand calmly while the frozen beasts shatter into glittering crystalline shards. Watching from the shadows, William Aranka clutches his head in sheer frustration as his master plan crumbles, while Faye and Louis stare in absolute awe at the frozen remnants of their terrifying enemies, prompting our hero to examine his hands, realizing his elemental magic is suddenly much easier to control, before Louis casually slaps him on the back, loudly praising the kid's ridiculously overpowered ice technique. Still, Faye isn't in the mood to celebrate, frantically warning them to move before another monster attacks. But our protagonist just smiles, pointing out that the Academy instructors have finally arrived to secure the area. This sudden rescue absolutely infuriates William Aranka, who grits his teeth in rage behind a nearby tree, forcing him to desperately activate a glowing red magic circle to trigger his final backup plan. William Aranka coughs up blood in sheer frustration, realizing his backup plan failed to eliminate his rivals, while a massive vortex of green wind magic suddenly erupts from the sky above the frozen forest, signaling the arrival of the powerful principal, who descends majestically to rescue the remaining Academy students. Finding the battlefield littered with exhausted and unconscious freshmen who barely survived the brutal monster onslaught. Walking up to our trio, the principal asks if everyone is safe after such a terrifying ordeal. prompting Louis and Faye to quickly cover for our protagonist by claiming Louis defeated the beasts alone, leaving the principal deeply suspicious that a mere freshman could solo multiple master-level monsters so easily. To change the subject, our silver-haired protagonist points toward a strange clue left behind in the ice, revealing a frozen monster head that still radiates a bizarre, highly unnatural trace of dark energy, forcing the principal to order the students back to the academy while the instructors investigate this conspiracy. Back at the academy, students gossip about the massive credits earned from the recent beast attack, while Louis stocks up on a massive stash of mental recovery potions despite the shopkeeper's warnings. But his shopping spree is interrupted when the principal approaches him for a private chat. Walking together, she reveals that these examined beast corpses showed clear signs of artificial modification, confirming Lewis's dark suspicion that the entire crisis was intentionally orchestrated by a hidden mastermind. She explains that with the Emperor growing old, rival factions are becoming increasingly impatient for power, plotting to target the Academy's elite students to gain leverage in the upcoming imperial succession struggle. Leaving Louis to process this massive political conspiracy while realizing something far more personal, because those mutated beasts in the forest were definitely targeting him and him alone, prompting the principal to promise she will keep investigating the conspiracy to ensure his safety. Waving goodbye, the Academy instructor reminds Louis to keep training hard and meet expectations, but our silver-haired hero is much more interested in the green recovery potion in his hand, popping the cap off to chug the entire vial down in one quick, refreshing gulp before tossing the empty glass aside as he casually strolls back to join his waiting classmates, determined to keep pushing his limits because he absolutely refuses to waste any more time. Meanwhile, a trembling William Aranka reports the disappointing results of their modified beast experiment to his father, explaining that while most of the monster corpses successfully self-destructed to hide the evidence, his intimidating father remains completely unfazed, sitting back on his lavish throne with absolute confidence, even though William frantically warns him that the Academy managed to recover some of the remains, since those test subjects came from a powerful empire that the headmaster cannot easily touch. Staring at our silver-haired hero's profile, William suspects the kid is actually the legendary Cursed Child, clenching his fist in frustration as he realizes the Academy's headmaster has been actively hiding his identity. But his father casually flicks his finger to dismiss his son's rising panic, instantly igniting the protagonist's profile into a bright, crackling burst of red flames. As Prince Vaughn smugly asks if his son seriously spends his days worrying about mere insects. Still, William frantically waves his hands, warning that this particular insect is a walking disaster. But the cold-eyed prince just walks away, completely unfazed by the kid's terrifying reputation, prompting William to ask if they are really going to leak this information to the Arcanist Association, as the burning document crumbles to ash, planning to let the goddess's protectors do the dirty work, because Prince Vaughn knows that letting his enemies destroy each other is the easiest way to win. Standing in the center of the massive Academy arena, our silver-haired protagonist prepares for a high-stakes spar, as he flares his blue mana and takes a solid stance to face his opponent, only for Neil Gunn to dive from above, unleashing a flurry of green wind slashes, prompting our boy to slide low across the stone floor to dodge the deadly blades. But Neil keeps up the pressure, forcing the kid to rely on pure speed, leaping backward through the air as another green energy wave barely misses his chest. Closing his eyes mid-air, our hero completely tunes out the noise to focus his senses, predicting Neil's next blindside attack before the blades can even reach his back, and with a sudden spin he channels his freezing mana directly into his bandaged fist, summoning a sharp ice spike that perfectly intercepts Neil's downward strike with a loud clash. Neil launches a blazing fire strike from above, but our protagonist counters with a massive ice spike, crashing both elemental forces together in a spectacular explosion of steam and raw mana. But the relentless onslaught continues as a sudden mud explosion forces our hero to leap backward, narrowly dodging the erupting earth as he slides across the arena floor to regain his footing, only to stomp his foot down hard, instantly freezing the cracked stone beneath him, unleashing a colossal glacier that surges upward to shatter his opponent's momentum in one clean sweep, though the intense strain leaves our protagonist bleeding from the nose as a glowing magic circle ignites, triggering a massive, fiery detonation that completely swallows the center of the training platform. Watching the smoke clear, Neil Gunn and his spear-wielding ally confidently celebrate their seemingly perfect combination, while Miliana and her partner remain cautious, knowing Louis has likely already seen right through their strategy. Walking out of the massive dust cloud, Louis claps his hands in genuine approval, as he praises his classmates for their incredible tactical growth and improved combat techniques, especially Miliana's clever strategy of using mud to mask their hidden items during the battle, admitting he barely avoided getting blasted away thanks to his advanced cold-sensing abilities, which leaves a frustrated Neil Gunn scratching his head over their opponent's completely uninjured state, while Faye marvels at Lewis's bizarre ability to track movements through pure energy signatures, prompting him to explain the spirit circulation technique he promises to teach them later. Before Miliana steps up to hand him a green recovery potion to restore his energy, taking a quick gulp, Louis listens as Miliana begins to voice a sudden, lingering suspicion. spitting his drink out in absolute shock when she suggests he isn't from this world. Coughing violently on his drink, our silver-haired protagonist frantically asks Louis why on earth he would think that. But Louis simply points a finger, explaining that normal people never share their secret techniques so freely, leaving the kid to sweat nervously while Miliana continues to glare at him with deep suspicion. Laughing it off, our hero claims his generous nature is just a habit from his humble commoner background, prompting Faye to sling her spear over her shoulder and remind everyone to rest before tomorrow's class, though she quickly turns back to warn him against secretly training alone and leaving them behind. Neil Gunn slaps his shoulder, bidding him farewell with a confident smirk as they wrap up. As his classmates depart, our protagonist stands completely alone in the massive, empty arena. Instead of resting, the kid immediately heads over to open a large sack left on the table, only to find his recovery potions are nearly gone, meaning he must exchange for more very soon. Just as our silver-haired protagonist prepares to chug down another green recovery potion, a firm hand suddenly grabs his wrist, stopping him right before the vial touches his lips, revealing the principal who scolds him for abusing these dangerous mental recovery stimulants, warning the kid with a glowing glare that his brain will literally turn to mush. But our hero can only stare back in grim silence, knowing the stakes are far too high, remembering his vow to a kind nun to become a grand master and reclaim his orphanage, while recalling the brutal enemies who smashed him into walls just to test his hidden power, and the terrifying masters who demanded he prove his worth on the battlefield, especially since those giant mutated beasts in the forest were clearly sent to eliminate him. With so many threats closing in, he tightly grips the glowing vial, ready for whatever comes next. Staring ahead with absolute resolve, our silver-haired protagonist knows he has no time to lose, as he holds up the green recovery potion that will supposedly double his training speed, before chugging the entire vial right in front of the deeply concerned academy principal, who can only stare in absolute disbelief at the kid's reckless disregard for his own health. But suddenly, a massive surge of crackling red mana violently erupts from his body, forcing the principal to widen her eyes in sheer terror at this overwhelming power, prompting her to instinctively summon her golden armor just to shield against the pressure, leaving our hero to sweat nervously while wondering if he accidentally did something incredibly weird, while the principal quickly deactivates her defenses, trying to play it cool despite the steam, though she remains completely stunned by the monstrous potential of the student standing before her. A box of green potions sits next to a pile of empty glass tubes scattered across the table, prompting the shocked principal to point at the mess and ask if he really drank them all, leaving our silver-haired protagonist to sheepishly scratch his head and admit that he actually did, only to get aggressively lectured as she points out he is chugging at least 2 bottles a day. But our boy defends his reckless habit, arguing it is the only way to quickly become a grand master. Unconvinced, the principal warns that his body is in terrible shape and insists on taking immediate action, suddenly grabbing his wrist with a firm grip that leaves him completely unable to escape her grasp, as she drags him down the hallway to conduct a magic test and check his internal health. Arriving at a grand sunlit laboratory, they prepare to run a thorough medical examination on the stubborn kid, as a single drop of his blood falls directly into a flask of bubbling green liquid. Examining the glowing green flask, the academy doctor finds absolutely zero signs of brain damage, which prompts the principal to frantically explain how Louis was acting completely out of his mind, recalling the terrifying, monstrous pressure and pure killing intent he had unleashed just moments ago. But the doctor suggests this sudden power spike might actually be a rare moment of enlightenment, secretly wondering if this bizarre reaction is just another hidden trait of the cursed child, since bypassing the goddess's established laws of magic should be completely impossible for any living being, though he decides it is best not to jump to any wild conclusions just yet, even if the principal remains absolutely convinced that something is deeply wrong with the kid. Walking back to his desk, the doctor prepares to run a few more tests on the specimen, knowing that alchemy still cannot fully explain how these potions interact with Louis's unique constitution. This principal walks with the doctor, wondering if the protagonist is hiding even deeper secrets, narrowing her eyes as she suspects there is much more to this mysterious kid than meets the eye, especially since the standard laws of alchemy in this world usually just fuse raw materials together, meaning they need to isolate the clashing components to create a truly high-purity potion. This next day, our silver-haired protagonist stands before a table loaded with advanced alchemy tools, while the skeptical principal questions what he plans to do with all these empty bottles, only for our boy to suddenly unleash a bright burst of golden energy from his hands, followed by a massive flash of blue mana that leaves both onlookers completely speechless. Against all odds, 3 perfectly refined potions of different colors glow brightly on the rack, leaving the academy doctor sweating in absolute shock at this impossible display of genius. Holding the 2 separated potion vials, the academy doctor gasps in absolute shock at Louis' divine extraction skills, and he immediately begs our silver-haired hero to become his apprentice in magic potion science, which Louis gladly accepts with a dramatic hand over his heart, playing the humble commoner card perfectly, prompting the ecstatic doctor to laugh heartily and slap our boy's shoulder while promising him double credits. Watching this ridiculous display, the skeptical principal crosses her arms, wondering if this kid has any weaknesses at all, while Louis immediately hits the books, studying how natural plants absorb elemental magic to create these potent liquids, realizing that earth and water are actually the core symbols of life that fuel a plant's growth, when suddenly a massive pillar of vibrant green mana violently erupts from his body right at his desk, leaving both the principal and the doctor to stare in absolute horror at this terrifying display of power, as Louis stands enveloped in glowing green energy, having seemingly achieved a state of legendary magical enlightenment. Massive, glowing green vines suddenly sprout and twist through the air, filling the entire laboratory with life, leaving the blonde academy doctor sweating in absolute disbelief as he witnesses this impossible magical phenomenon, while the vibrant green energy completely takes over the room, defying all known laws of alchemy. But our silver-haired protagonist calmly explains that fusing water and earth simply creates a brand new force, revealing a swirling green glow in his eye as he proudly names it the wood element. Staring at the floating white flower in his hand, the skeptical principal tries to process this bizarre explanation, as our boy just smiles playfully, letting the gentle pink vines wrap around his bandaged fingers, prompting the curious principal to reach out, wanting to examine the strange plant for herself, only for the vine to react violently the very instant her finger makes contact with it, instantly mutating into a terrifying carnivorous beast that snaps its massive jaws right in her face. Reacting instantly, the shocked principal raises her arm as the pink vine lunges directly at her face, but the mutated carnivorous plant snaps its jaws shut, biting down hard on her sleeve, prompting the furious principal to ignite her mana, unleashing a massive fiery explosion to incinerate the beast. Enveloped in the blazing inferno, the terrifying plant heads are instantly scorched and blasted to pieces, while Louis remains completely unfazed at his desk, surrounded by his peaceful green wood magic, as the whimpering plant heads shrink back into harmless buds right above his bandaged hand. Extinguishing her flames, the stunned principal marvels at how easily the kid created and controlled life, but Louis just smiles, explaining that the wood attribute holds an even greater secret, as a soothing green light envelops the plant, demonstrating its incredible natural restorative energy, leaving the blonde doctor to realize that this legendary element is the ultimate key to healing. Louis explains that the biggest difference between potions and plants lies in their elemental composition, which leaves the blonde doctor deeply contemplating the complex relationship between composite elements and alchemy, before excitedly offering to supply our silver-haired hero with all the raw materials he needs, though he quickly stops the kid's gratitude to ask one incredibly serious question, narrowing his eyes as he asks Louis if he truly desires the power to change fate, leading him deep down into a massive, hollow stone cavern beneath the academy. This doctor watches in awe as Louis unleashes his vibrant green wood mana once again, instantly causing glowing blue vines to sprout and climb rapidly toward the light, leaving both of them to marvel at the strange glowing fruit growing on the magical plant, as the doctor gently plucks the valuable specimen, completely stunned by this impossible growth speed. Louis sighs, realizing that cultivating such high-value magical plants drains his mana reserves incredibly fast. Snapping his fingers, the blonde doctor agrees, reminding him that absolute power always demands a steep price. Yet the glowing blue vines swirling around them prove that Louis is already bypassing those natural limits, prompting the doctor to smile warmly, noting that the kid's sacrifice is practically nothing compared to others. He praises Louis for purifying the potions, minimizing their side effects, and mastering the legendary wood element, walking him over to a massive storage rack filled with their newly manufactured, high-grade magical elixirs. Paragraph 22T7. Our silver-haired hero stares at the colorful vials, ranging from physical enhancement to deep mental recovery. He holds his ground as the situation unfolds, but the doctor suddenly turns on his heel, announcing it is time to test these experimental brews, explaining with a confident smirk that the absolute fastest way to grow stronger is through brutal combat. Stepping onto the circular training platform, the doctor challenges our hero to a high-stakes sparring match. Grinning with absolute confidence, Louis holds up his newly refined potions and prepares for the match, before chugging down a vial to boost his stats right before the battle begins. Charging forward with a sudden burst of speed, he unleashes a violent aura of red mana, which collides with the principal's defense in a massive, earth-shattering explosion of elemental power, leaving our hero to realize that the formidable principal is an absolute monster in combat. Later that night, the quiet moonlight shines peacefully over the massive academy dormitories, where a shirtless Louis dries his hair, still aching from the principal's brutal training session, sighing as he realizes his newly developed recovery potions are the only things keeping him standing. But he suddenly freezes upon spotting a quiet little girl crouching on his floor, staring in absolute shock as he recognizes the unexpected guest as none other than Kara. Kara crouches on the floor, pointing directly at a spilled vial of glowing green liquid, prompting Louis to nervously explain that the academy doctor supposedly developed the potion for his safety, but the stubborn girl just sits there hugging her knees, completely unconvinced by his excuse, before suddenly standing up and marching right over to our startled silver-haired hero. cornering him with an intense, unblinking stare that makes him sweat in sheer panic. Pointing her finger directly at him, Kara confidently declares that he was the one who actually made it, leaving Louis to frantically wave his hands in a desperate attempt to deny the accusation. Though his guilty and terrible acting only make him look incredibly suspicious, until he finally sighs and scratches his head, admitting he simply cannot hide anything from her. Kara calmly explains she knew all along because the principal's usual methods are far too conservative. Waving his finger, Louis begs Kara to keep his secret safe so he can avoid any unnecessary drama. Rather than arguing, the quiet girl reaches into her collar to pull out a folded document, leaving our shirtless hero completely baffled as he takes the paper and asks what it is, which turns out to be a highly official business contract from the Candace Trading Company. Louis is stunned by the incredibly generous terms, while Kara quietly crouches to handle the spilled potion, carefully pouring the concentrated green liquid into a beaker of water to dilute its magical potency, ensuring his signature high-grade elixirs look like completely ordinary low-quality brews to any outside observers. Thrusting the diluted mixture back into his hands, Kara demands that he protect his identity at all costs, prompting our boy to realize that selling his creations through a third-party merchant is the perfect cover, since it completely hides his involvement and keeps the greedy Academy elders from breathing down his neck. Kara explains that keeping the principal and the saint in the dark guarantees massive profits, warning our boy that his identity as the developer must remain a total secret. Louis carefully reviews the contract, realizing that multiple sales routes will make his potions impossible to trace. But he raises a finger to announce that he has a few non-negotiable conditions, demanding they dilute the mixtures for safety and send profits to support his old orphanage. Without a single word of complaint, Kara snatches the document right back from his hands, immediately sitting down at the table to draft the new terms into the official agreement. She proudly holds up the revised contract, showing off her incredibly swift and professional work. Taking the paper back, our silver-haired protagonist cannot help but smirk at how perfectly everything is aligning, sealing the deal with a firm handshake while praising the brilliant business mind of his new partner. Louis offers some extra business advice to his new partner, claiming it will boost their profits significantly. Leaning in close as they both stare at the messy alchemy desk to whisper their secret plans, which leaves Kara completely stunned by our silver-haired hero's surprisingly sharp mind, prompting Louis to wave goodbye and tell her to get some rest before tomorrow's potion brewing begins. As the door shuts behind him, the quiet girl stands alone in the room, deep in thought. Moments later, Kara steps out into the hallway, clutching the newly signed contract in her hand, reaching up to untie her hair as she prepares to make her quiet exit, letting her long purple locks flow freely as she steps out into the cool night air. Meanwhile, a pair of birds flutter past the stone windows of the quiet academy building, gliding silently through the open corridors as the secrets of the night begin to unfold. A sudden cloud of smoke erupts on the wooden floor, signaling a stealthy intrusion, as two masked intruders wearing bird skulls and bandages leap down from the ceiling, landing silently on their sharp, bird-like talons as they begin to infiltrate the dormitory. One of the pink-haired intruders peeks around the corner, her reptilian eye scanning the quiet hallway, signaling her partner as they creep closer to the target's closed wooden door, scaling the walls with absolute stealth to avoid making a single sound on the floorboards. Suddenly, Kara pulls her hood up, completely catching the pink-haired intruder off guard, prompting the assassin to lunge forward with blinding speed to silence her before she can scream. But a swift, devastating kick cuts through the air in a flash of purple and white, leaving the masked intruder groveling on the floor in absolute agony after getting thoroughly stomped. Rubbing her bruised head, the pink-haired intruder whines about getting brutally stomped by Kara again. Her white-haired partner sighs, urging her to focus on their secret mission before they get caught. Stepping out of the steamy bath, Kara stands confidently as she prepares to address her visitors. She tightly wraps a clean white towel around herself, completely unfazed by their sudden intrusion. Walking over to her desk, the purple-haired girl casually picks up the newly signed business contract. She tosses the official papers directly to her masked subordinates, catching them completely off guard. Scanning the generous terms, the pink-haired assassin shrieks in disbelief, questioning her lady's sanity. Both intruders complain about the extreme special treatment being offered to some random academy kid, but the white-haired partner suddenly gasps, realizing this insane plan will make their company filthy rich. Kara simply smirks, crossing her arms as she reveals that Louis was the actual mastermind. This pink-haired assassin shrieks in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a mere 13-year-old kid has this much power, but Kara simply brushes her purple hair back, quietly noting that Louis possesses an unbelievable amount of raw potential. Her white-haired subordinate quickly voices his concerns, worried the silver-haired prodigy might eventually betray them for another royal heir, prompting Kara to cut him off with a brand new directive for her loyal, skull-masked subordinates, calmly declaring her intention to take complete control over the Rashera orphanage just as Louis requested, quietly reflecting on how our silver-haired hero is actually a surprisingly kind person at heart. Dismissing her subordinates with a lazy wave of her hand, she tells them to make their quiet exit, while a pair of white birds flutter out of the stone window, soaring into the cool night sky. leaving Kara to stare up at the glowing full moon, realizing the upcoming midterm exams are approaching fast, as she whispers Lewis's name, eagerly waiting to see the true extent of his legendary potential. This Candace Academy Examination Center is shown, hosting the highly anticipated midterm exam, which kicks off with a brutal trap-filled maze where using any martial magic is strictly forbidden, leaving Faye to fail miserably after getting wrapped up in dark energy vines with only 300 points. Then Kane Aranka gets absolutely bombarded by glowing light arrows, failing with just 320, while Miliana gets trapped in spikes and Kara gets shot down by a barrage of flying slimes. Even the hot-headed Neil Gunn gets overwhelmed and knocked out by a swarm of purple bat monsters, prompting the buff temple instructor to cross his arms and threaten them with even more brutal training. This principal walks up to check on the freshmen, and the instructor admits their fundamentals are improving, before pointing toward the arena to reveal the one student who has caught his undivided attention, as Louis confidently steps onto the field, smiling because he's about to break some records. This buff instructor tells the principal that Louis is easily going to score over 600 points, proposing a high-stakes bet with some premium-aged liquor on the line to make things interesting. While the snobbish noble students scoff, convinced a mere commoner has absolutely zero chance of succeeding, completely unaware that our silver-haired hero is calmly walking into the arena with absolute focus, as a magical flaming crossbow suddenly materializes in the air, locking directly onto its target, triggering a massive array of glowing light traps that threaten to rain down absolute destruction, which immediately unleash a relentless barrage of fiery projectiles straight toward our defenseless boy. But Louis simply activates his void calculation method, his eyes glowing with intense blue mana, mapping out every single incoming threat with flawless precision to detect the perfect evasion paths, before instantly activating his muscles to execute a series of impulsively swift, godlike dodges. With his calculations complete, Louis effortlessly slides past a massive explosion in a flash of blue light, sprinting through the narrow stone corridors of the maze while dodging deadly spikes and fiery traps, but our silver-haired hero suddenly freezes in surprise as a strange magical presence blocks his path, revealing a sinister cloud of purple energy that begins to manifest right in front of him, forcing Louis to leap backward and execute a flawless mid-air spin to avoid the dark magic, sliding down a steep stone wall with the grace of a seasoned acrobat to escape, landing safely on the cold floor before quickly looking up to scan his next obstacle. As he charges down the next hallway, a giant glowing blue creature suddenly drops from the ceiling, leaving our boy face to face with a massive, goofy-looking monster known as a jet slime, which instantly turns hostile and sprouts watery tentacles to block his path to the finish line. Louis spins gracefully through the air, narrowly dodging a high-pressure blast of water magic, landing smoothly on his feet as the liquid explodes harmlessly against the stone wall, but he barely has time to breathe before a pack of angry jet slimes slides into view, prompting our silver-haired hero to pause as a heavy mechanical grinding sound echoes through the corridor, directly revealing a massive stone cannon barrel sliding out from the ancient maze walls, which quickly multiplies into a whole grid of artillery charging up with blinding orange energy. Realizing he is trapped in a deadly pincer attack, Louis braces himself for the incoming onslaught, just as the slimes unleash a coordinated barrage of high-velocity water beams from behind, while the wall cannons simultaneously fire a lethal rain of fiery projectiles right at him, forcing our boy to push his void calculation method to the absolute limit to survive. Louis spins through the air, dodging the chaotic collision of fire and water magic with absolute grace. But processing this massive wave of incoming data requires some serious mental heavy lifting, prompting our silver-haired hero to focus his glowing blue eyes directly on the essence of the spell, mapping out the opposing magical forces as they surge through the narrow stone corridor, until he finds the exact point where the fiery projectiles and watery blast will collide. With a confident smirk, Louis realizes his complex calculations are finally complete and ready to execute, landing gracefully amidst a massive cloud of dust as he prepares his next move, sliding along the stone wall to effortlessly bypass the remaining traps and slimes, finding the absolute optimal solution to bypass this entire chaotic mess in one go, as glowing magic circles light up the floor, guiding him straight toward the finish line. Fire beams shoot from the wall cannons while the jet slimes spit out high-pressure water blasts, but Louis effortlessly taps his foot against a glowing magic circle to launch himself upward, leaving a trail of afterimages as he weaves through the chaotic crossfire of elemental magic, which results in the poor jet slimes taking the full force of the fiery artillery blasts, while the colliding elemental spells trigger a massive chain reaction that completely obliterates the remaining traps. Amidst the smoke and debris, our silver-haired hero glides gracefully through the air without a scratch, as a series of massive explosions rocks the entire maze, drawing everyone's attention in the arena, prompting the sweating principal to push up his glasses in absolute shock at this insane display, wondering if Louis actually calculated the perfect trajectory to neutralize the monsters and traps simultaneously. With the temple instructor simply smirking, fully confident that the kid is about to break every record, Louis stands confidently amidst the burning embers, completely unfazed by the destruction around him, strolling casually down the stone corridor as if he is just taking a peaceful evening walk. But a sudden streak of purple energy cuts through the air, forcing him to react instantly, his eyes glowing with blue mana as he barely deflects deflects the high-speed projectile with his hand. Looking up, our silver-haired hero tracks the trajectory of the strange purple magic soaring above him, silently noting that whatever just attacked him possesses some seriously terrifying speed, only to realize a whole swarm of purple echo bats is now diving straight toward him. Up in the stands, the principal doubts Louis can break the record against the continent's fastest monsters. But our boy simply smashes his fist into the stone floor, shattering the ground beneath him, channeling a surge of blue lightning to levitate the broken debris for his next big move. Louis quickly channels his mana, forming multiple glowing blue magic circles around his bandaged hands, before unleashing a massive fan of high-speed energy projectiles to target the incoming swarm. But the agile echo bats dodge the initial barrage, diving down with terrifying speed, only for Louis to instantly counter by launching a lightning-infused stone shard straight through a bat. Up in the stands, the principal and the instructor watch in absolute disbelief at his reaction time, as Louis systematically dismantles the swarm, racking up hundreds of points with every single strike, leaving the sweating principal completely speechless at the kid's godlike analytical abilities and flawless execution, while our silver-haired hero casually strolls past the pile of defeated monsters without breaking a sweat, until a massive firework erupts in the sky to signal the end of his record-breaking run, officially crowning Louis with a perfect score of 999 points to silence the snobbish nobles. Louis looks back with a sigh of relief, glad to finally have this exhausting exam over with. Meanwhile, the snobbish noble students fume in the stands, desperately plotting their revenge for the upcoming combat exam, while the buff temple instructor laughs hysterically, demanding his premium liquor from the deeply regretful principal. Walking back to his classmates, Louis gets bombarded with questions from a highly impressed Faye and Miliana. But their celebration is cut short when the hot-headed Neil Gunn suddenly blocks their path, only to silently turn around and walk away, leaving the entire group completely baffled by his behavior. Kane Aranka smugly assumes Neil finally learned his lesson and realized the massive gap in their power. But Louis narrows his eyes in deep thought, sensing that something is seriously off with the red-haired brawler, as Neil walks away with a menacing red aura of pure, unbridled rage radiating from his body. Soon after, the loud temple instructor announces the start of the combat exam, ordering everyone to draw their lots. This buff temple instructor stands in the arena, announcing that going all out is perfectly fine. Stepping up to the drawing box, a confident senior student eagerly anticipates his upcoming match. He reaches into the barrel, viewing this as a rare chance to teach his juniors a lesson. Meanwhile, Louis and Kane Aranka watch silently as the senior prepares to make his selection, but a strange pink glow suddenly radiates from the senior's ring, subtly manipulating the paper lots, leaving the smug senior completely satisfied with his underhanded trick as he looks back, before casually pulling out his selected slip of paper to finalize his match, silently plotting to crush Louis Kirill, whom he considers to be an incredibly troublesome opponent. At the same time, a furious Neil Gunn vows to strike our hero down the moment he shows any weakness, unaware that Louis Q is already stepping up to draw his own lot with absolute confidence. Faye smugly reminds Kane Aranka that he has to get past her before he can even think about facing Louis, while Kane grumbles in annoyance after realizing he got paired up with a rather troublesome opponent. Meanwhile, Miliana looks at her slip and realizes she is in the exact same block as Louis, pointing out her first opponent to our silver-haired hero while a group of older students looms nearby. These smug seniors mock the freshmen with throat-slitting gestures, completely convinced they have this match in the bag. But Louis simply crumbles his paper, slip with a confident smile, ready to show them no mercy. Watching from the shadows, a shirtless Neil Gunn clutches his slip with a manic grin of pure hatred, while the senior leader orders his lackeys to risk their lives just to wear down Louis's stamina, prompting the buff temple instructor to raise his hand and officially start the block matches. Faye flashes a highly provocative smirk at Kane Aranka, who can only glare back in absolute frustration. Miliana watches in absolute worry as her smug opponent cracks his knuckles and sticks his tongue out, while Neil Gunn and Louis lock eyes with fierce determination as the combat matches finally begin.